Go Fish just isn't Quark's game. There is no finer vintage of Klingon blood wine than 2309. And someone has to teach Federation officers the difference between a warp matrix flux capacitor and a self-sealing stem bolt. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today we're doing a review of, oh boy, here we go, Deep Space Nine, Season 7, Episode 25, What You Leave Behind, written by Ira Steven Behr and Hans Beimler, directed by Alan Craker. This was June 2nd, 1999. Where were you? Also, very quickly, very special thanks to Frank Gentile, Henry Unger, and Immo Ceiling Fan Radka for sponsoring this episode. They've been very patient, waiting for 7 seasons to sponsor this one. Thank you, Frank, Henry, and Immo.
Immo, the first.
Salute to Immo, yeah.
Our very first
original
associate
producer. Yeah.
The OG. And today we are joined by the most special of all guests, Mr. Ira Steven Behr.
Happy to be here.
And of course, everybody knows there's no way this is not a Nog episode. Malissa Longo is here. The band is back together, and it's time to do this.
Yeah.
How you guys doing?
Wow.
We're so somber right now, aren't we?
I'm a little sad. Yeah, that's how I'm doing. I'm sad.
I help it.
I had to wash the tears off my face before I could get into this episode and start talking about it. It's that impactful, and oh man, there's so much stuff that you threw into this. This could have been a feature film. How much stuff was going on in this? Yeah. But I just found myself essentially just walking down memory lane with everybody else, and you wrapped up a lot of stories in a nice bow, Ira. And when I was watching that, I was thinking, oh, he's wrapping a lot of things up, and it made me think of Carmen saying that there was nothing left for his character to kind of do, or at least that's what he felt towards the end. But I feel the opposite watching this episode. I feel like there's so much more that could come. Even though you close it up, you wrap up a lot of things. Do you feel like it's like there could be like so much more that you could extrapolate from the end of this?
Well, when we did it, we knew it was the end. And a lot of the things that are in the episode are in there because we knew it was the end. I mean, there was going to be no movie. There was no doubt about that. So this was the story, and it might have been a slightly different episode if there had been any kind of a possibility for some kind of continuation. So I did my best, and we all did, to wrap up as much as we could. I think one of the things I told myself yesterday, I don't want to do my usual, looking back and going, well, that could have been better. That should have been better. We could have done more. But it was definitely jam-packed. And, even with the budget that we had, we had to lower our expectations of how much we could get done. That being said, we did a hell of a lot. And we try to miss, we try to include everyone, and everyone to have their moment. So I felt watching it again after all these years that we pretty much had achieved that. The only one who got left out was obviously Dax, Terry. She and I have a slightly different memory how all that went down. But let's just say I asked a lot of people to get permission to use clips of Terry in that, and that door was slammed in my face multiple times, and so it goes. But with that aside, I think everyone, got their due. And if there was I've never felt that we needed to continue the story, to be honest. I mean, yes, it was fun doing that episode 1, season 8 for the documentary, but that was an idea just to get the band back together, which is why when they asked if I wanted to do it as a graphic novel, I said definitely not. It wasn't meant for that. One day, if we came in the next day, I would have changed half the stuff probably. Who knows? If it was a real story break, we would have kept going and refined it. But that was a fun day, and I love that day, and I cherish that day. But I have no problem if there was never, I'm glad that actors get work, that they hired Nana and Armin to do Lower Decks, but that's money. That has nothing to do with Deep Space Nine. That's just keeping people employed. But in terms of the storytelling, that story's done.
Ira, just real quick, before we get too deep into this, you did mention that this is the first time you've watched this since 1999, which is just mind-blowing to me, over 23 years, which gives me two feelings. Number one is, personally, I'm honored that after 23 years, you decided for this show and this episode, you decided to finally go back and rewatch this. And I'm flattered that you would do that for us. But secondarily, I have to know, what did it feel like? You must have had so many different moments of rushes of emotion. I had tons of rushes of emotions. I don't even really have emotions or feelings. So I can only imagine you going through this. Can you share some or all of that?
Well, that's asking a lot there, Ryan.
I know. That's why I said some first.
I don't want to get too in the weeds with it and get, emotional about it. But I would say that, part of it was I was right back in 1999, going, shit, we needed more money there. We needed, where are the extras? All that stuff that doesn't mean anything to people who were watching, but just killed me at the time and bothered me now. All the money we spent on the ship battles, which I find, eye candy, but has no real emotional, attachment to it. And then the stuff with Garrick and Damar and Nana, we're stuck in this little room and we can't move around. We have so few soldiers with them. The battle is so, that's the kind of human interaction and human, emotion that I would have liked to have seen more. But that's all bullshit. That's all just stuff that, when you create something or help to create something, you see the flaws as much as you see the positive stuff. Right off the bat, I'll tell you, I thought that Nicole and Sid, I loved that. I hadn't even remembered that. I thought if the show had continued, I thought that was a relationship that was really going to work. For anyone who cares, that I thought they were a nice couple, and I thought there was room to play with that and Miles and Sid and all of that. I thought that was good. That worked really well for me. I thought the last scene that we ever shot, that final scene that we shot that night on the last day of shooting between Quark and Vic, the one you were talking about, the go fish scene.
Yeah.
Everyone had basically left by then. It was me and the crew watching it. I was surprised everyone had gone and didn't want to see the last scene, but I thought that scene worked really nice. I thought that was a nice scene between Quark and Vic that we hadn't had many of those. I thought that was
Yeah, I said the same thing. I wrote down more when I saw Quark and Vic. I said I could have used more of Quark and Vic going back and forth.
Totally.
I love him saying, "Yeah, bartender's a noble profession," you know, and then and he said, and then he kind of looks like he says, "Yeah, but I'm not a bartender," so you know,
Right.
it was a great moment between them. Definitely could have used more of it, you know, either going forward or in the past. But I loved it. I loved the scene. So that was the last scene that was actually filmed.
Yeah, that night. There might have been pickups later on, but that was the final goodbye scene. Just the two of them, you know, and it had been such an emotional night, you know, with the scene with him singing and you know, getting through that, and Nana. I'll never forget Nana bursting into tears when Jimmy sang "The Way You Look Tonight," and he said, "And the way you wrinkle your nose," and she just broke out into tears, and we had to stop filming. I mean, he just got up close to her, and she just lost it. It was that kind of a night. I also thought, which is something that I know there are fans who don't like it, but it worked for me, and I'm glad to see it still worked. I thought the stuff with Dukat and Kai Wynn, I really dug it. I think it was. I thought Alimo was terrific. I thought they were both really good. I love the fact that, you know, I know people who think that he was a sex symbol, and all these women who wanted to sleep with Dukat and think, you know, a lot of strange people out there, people who marry serial killers. I'm
with you guys. I'm with you guys out there.
So I thought that stuff worked really well.
That stuff worked very well. There was the one-upmanship between the two. I thought for a second, I almost thought, wow, so Kai Wynn is the biggest villain in Star Trek. She's the winner. You know, she's the last man standing. But then the whole flip, I didn't expect to see Dukat come back to life, and the speech where he gives her, where you really expected you to be the emissary. That speech and that scene played out so well. And she actually almost had a redemptive moment before her demise, right? Where she
she called out to the emissary. She didn't say Sisko. She said emissary. So in the very last second, she went back to the prophets and not the pirates.
Yeah. So I thought that was all good. I mean, the caves and all that. And, you know, again, everything, all the scenes would have been, I think, could have been helped with a little more time and love. I mean, if this was a show that we were doing today, we wouldn't be doing 26. We'd be doing 8 a season, and you'd have, you know, 10 or 12 days to shoot them instead of, you know, the 8 days we had. So I can't help thinking of that, but I try to get past that. So that stuff really worked for me. A lot of it, you know, the worked for me, but that was all like, you know, I thought the female shapeshifter, I think Salome, that worked really well.
Definitely.
And you know, Wayoon, Jeff, you know, you might not like the guy, but goddamn, he's loyal, you know.
Oh my God, he cried, and he was crying to her like, I pledged my loyalty to you. It was so crazy. I thought it was. And the changeling, even though she's this frail woman, when she grabs, you know, the Cardassian legate at the moment, when she grabs him by the throat, I feel the power inside of her and the wickedness that she has inside of her.
What an actress!
I mean, it was an excellent actress. I don't think we've given her enough credit. I'm glad you did say that. She plays that part excellently, and actually just everybody in this episode. Garrick was so great.
I know it was a strong Andy show. Andy was terrific.
So good.
He really was.
When he talks about the Cardassia he left behind, and the character, the woman who played his like friend that they're hiding out in, she was great. Neela was great. She even had everybody had moments where I mean, I was just thinking, even the laughing. I wanted to ask you about the laughing moment where Garrett kind of starts laughing, and then Kira, when Kira laughs, everybody has to laugh because she's so infectious. But I thought that was a nice break from how tense I was feeling. I'm glad you put it in there.
Well, I just thought at the time, I remember talking about it with Hansi, that it would absolutely be the last thing any audience would expect, because you just, all the rules say you don't break the tension. You just keep building the tension up, especially in an episode like this, where it's the end and you're trying to go out with a bang. And so it was like, no, forget what you're expecting, forget how it's done, do something else, which is the pressure and the laughter, that kind of infectious laughter that comes out of such anxiety and fear. I thought, it was a bold move, and they pulled it off, well.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to second what you said about Nana. I just wanted to add to that earlier was I hadn't watched this episode in, I don't even know how long, but a very long time. And that's pretty much the one thing I remember from the episode was when I was a kid or a young adult watching that for the first time, I was like, whoa, that actress really cried. You know what I mean? Like there's that moment when she has that smile, and she, like, it was such a powerful moment that, like, it actually, that's the one image I'm really stuck with, was that genuine moment where I was like, wow, that must have been a powerful day on set. There were a lot of emotions running around there. But I just want to add that.
I noticed that too. Her face was red, and you could see the tears in her eyes. And I'm just like,
I thought Renee was amazing in this as Odo.
Yeah.
The stuff you gave Odo to do, where he kind of steps up and he tells Kira that you have to trust me. I'm going to link with her and heal her. That whole scene was, I thought he played it to the T, especially the scene where he says goodbye to her. I thought, wow, this guy was like, what a fantastic actor Renee is and always will be. That tuxedo scene when he switches into the tuxedo.
He hated it. He despised it.
Well, we loved it.
That was one of the great moments, to be standing there right off the set, right before he goes on, and he is just ripping me a new a-hole about how dumb and bad this is, and how much, and it's like, okay. They're calling you to the set, it's, I hear you, Renee. I know you don't like this, but then he goes out and he plays it. That's what always got me about Renee, was that, he could be so ornery at times and so opinionated and so, upfront in your grill about what he did not like. And then he would just do it. And no one would ever dream or know. And to me, it still works. It's that thing. He's taking everything away from. That's what I didn't understand, that he didn't understand. He's breaking her heart. He's ripping away this foundational relationship that they have together. He has to give her something. This is goodbye in Excelsius. There is no hello coming after this. It's goodbye. So he gives her the thing, that the tuxedo, that was the beginning of that journey that they had. He didn't see it. He didn't want to see it, but anyway.
But he nailed it.
He nailed it, and it worked. So
much tenderness in that moment where there exchanges the kisses on the hands and then the face and then and it was just so beautiful. And I was a wreck. I was a wreck. And it was the strongest relationship Kira had ever had in her entire life with Odo. That was the most important relationship of her life. And she had to let it go.
It felt like they really knew each other at a much deeper level. There was an understanding there more so than with any other relationship.
Yeah.
I also felt that the words that he's saying were so pointed because it almost reminds me of the man himself when he says, "This is the way I want you to remember me." I feel like that's how we remember the man himself, as Odo, and he didn't, show us any side of him that was weak in any way or frail. It's always the strong, confident guy who's walking into whatever he, knowingly walking into whatever his destiny is with kind of a fearlessness and courage. So that's how he went out. And I thought that was really great.
Go ahead.
How much of watching this was also like a reminder of you in the writer's room coming up with all of these? Like, I felt like the flashbacks were like almost, I felt like I was watching the flashbacks of you guys too, even though it wasn't on screen. It was just like you guys in that room coming up with all of these moments. Did it feel like that as well for you?
Well, the truth is that, to the very end, we were under the gun, as always. So Hans and I were banging this out, and with all emotions of, it's like you don't want to really think too much about it being the last episode, though it is. But, we know that when we write the end, that's it. But so we were so busy, what I did was I gave Weddle and Thompson the job of going off and looking through 7 years of stuff and finding clips for Miles and Julian, and good clips for Worf without Dax, unfortunately, and Jake and just everyone. And so they pull like well over 100 clips for us to look at, and then we just like all of us looked at them and cut them back until we came up with what we had. But even at the time, I remember, even with all the production and things that kept us busy and not able to sit back and go, wow, this is a big moment. This is the end of especially, I was the only one who had been there for the full 7. So, it was a big thing, but we didn't live in that space. But once we started picking the actual clips, then it started to, and we'd see them cut together. That was, by then we were done with the script and we had a little more time, and it was like, okay, yeah, that's gonna get them where it hurts.
Now, were all of you guys in Vic's bar in that scene? So who was?
I saw Ira's sunglasses there. That's for sure.
Ira. I think I saw Renee.
It was a Where's Waldo? Because I saw Jeffrey and Casey and Max and Aaron and JG and Ira.
Yeah. Ron was there. Renee was. Cheveria was there.
Yeah.
Hans
was
in
there
with his wife. Hans was there with his wife. My Laura was supposed to be there, but the other thing that I remember is that my wife was in the hospital with pneumonia.
Oh, geez.
So that last week, on top of everything else, my wife was in the hospital with pneumonia. And I remember standing the last day, standing outside the studio, outside of the set, the sound stage with Jimmy, who at that point was pretty friendly with myself and with Laura. And, the idea of a 7-year journey and getting to this point, this last day of shooting, and on top of all that emotion, I'm worried about my wife in the hospital with pneumonia. It was just like, wow, and the kids were so small back then. So I'm worried about the kids and they're being taken care of.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, everyone we could get. Rick refused to do it. We invited Rick. He refused. He didn't want to be with the little people.
Was he in Minsk?
Yeah. And I thought that Michael had done it, but I guess he did not. But I didn't see Michael, so I guess he decided not to do it either.
Speaking of Minx, though, I did think that there was a little bit of a Kira moment for O'Brien as well when he hugged Bashir, when he hugged Sid, and he kind of pulls away for that half second. I felt like there was a genuine. I mean, now Colum's an amazing actor, so I wouldn't put it past him. But every once in a while, you get like a glimpse of something that actually looks like they're not acting anymore for a second, and it felt like he had that moment after they pulled away from their hug. And I wanted to see more. I wanted to get a little bit more of him. But that montage, a little bit, that montage destroyed me. I needed to call a construction company to peel me off my floor. I had to pause it, take a break.
I did the same thing. I had to take a break, and I was just like,
"Oh my gosh!"
I had to take a break. Yeah, when Sisko gave his speech, and he says to the best crew any captain ever had, and part of us will always, remain on DS9. I'm thinking, man, these are like such poignant words because they ring true in so many ways. It's. I'm watching it, part of me remains there. I'm still there.
That's exactly it. I mean, I remember writing that. I remember when we wrote that. I remember, that was editorializing, obviously. That's all of us speaking. But you have to be out of your mind if you don't think, and I know some of the actors in a way were happy that it was over because of the typecasting and they thought, they could do other things and blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't matter. We're all on Deep Space Nine. How could we not be on Deep Space Nine? 7 years, 26 episodes a year, that was the complete, that was breaking the fourth wall pretty much. He didn't say it directly into camera, but he could have. He could have said it to the audience as well, to the real fans. I thought the other thing I thought was interesting that I hadn't realized, and it took me a while to get back to what I was thinking at the time, what we were thinking at the time, and is that especially for the first 45 minutes, the battle, the whole until war is over, basically, the one who seems to have the least to do and the least amount of levels is Sisko. Sisko doesn't have, yes, we do the scene with Cassidy, which is lovely with you and the family unit together, which was nice. But basically, Sisko, I realized, was in, captain mode, real captain mode. The war was like reaching its climax. So we could not really kind of cut away and have any kind of like meeting, fun character things with Sisko. Number one, I don't think Avery would have wanted to play it because he was locked in to, we're getting this done. This is going to finally be over. We're going to win this thing or find a way or whatever. So that it was only after all that happened in the second half that, that story, his story, was able to breathe because there was no breathing room for him. He was a soldier in war, a leader in war.
And some of his scenes, like I wrote down here, Penny is amazing. She was wonderful in this episode. She'll just playing the full range, but the Sisko, when he has that kind of climax moment with Ducat, that I was eating that up. Like, that was just so good. When he says to him, like, you're on your knees. How could you, stand up to me when can't even get off your knees? Just that whole, that's what we've been waiting for, that moment. And it gave me all that I needed to. Specifically, I remember when Avery says, I am, and the way he says it, he kind of strains the sound of it and elongates it. and sings it in some type of way.
Love
and
that
I
guy.
thought, I was like, wow, this is some good stuff here.
Can we take sorry, I was just going to take a quick break. But actually, Ira, please, if you have a response to that, let's hear it for sure.
Well, no, what I was going to say was, I was very much aware that we did not have, a final Nog and Jake moment. We couldn't really find room for that. And also, again, it was like, we could have done it with more time, but basically he was also in his military mode. The whole thing is about, at the end, he's the lieutenant, and it's not about the kids and friendship in that sense, Plus he's going to be there, or he's there.
They're not saying goodbye.
Yeah. But yeah, at the time it was like, but then there were places where I wish, there were time to do a little bit more between, obviously everyone talks about Sisko and Jake. I wish we could have handled that. But,
Yeah, in my head canon, Sisko is going to continue to visit Jake and Cassidy through this vision way that he does.
Hopefully more often than in The Visitor. Because in The Visitor, it was few and far between.
He had to wait a long time.
Well,
but that's,
now he's a god, and now he can do that.
Yeah, but
Maybe
the gods seem to only intervene when it's something serious. They don't come up to say, hey, you're low on milk, They come for important stuff. But yeah, when we get to the other side of the break, I have some more questions for you about the Sisko character and the choices that you made.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's hop on that break. I just wanted to add very quickly that a line by Cassidy that I thought was beautifully written, I thought it was just the perfect quote and beautifully delivered, was when she sees Sisko and they're up in the Celestial Temple. She says, where are we? The Celestial Temple. And she says, this is scaring me. Let's go. And I'm like, that is, whoever wrote that line understands how people think and how they talk to people that they trust. She's just like, this is scaring me. Let's go. I thought that was a perfect A+ line.
And delivery of the line.
Exactly.
There was, I could read it on her face. She projected that fear.
It was perfect. It was just, I was very happy with that. All right, let's hop on our break. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc, Lofton, and Ira Steven Behr.
Hello.
Myself and Malissa Longo are also here. We're very emotional, but we're trying to bring the energy for you. And people listening are like, you don't have to. We're kind of sad too. Very quickly, here are the trivioids of the week. Julian Bashir tells Miles O'Brien everything. Esri Dax and Bashir make a pact. Keiko O'Brien has confirmed Kiriyoshi's appointment with Nurse Bandy. Arphili and ficus are shrubs, not trees. What's the plural of ficus? Fici? I don't know. Molly lets Chief play with her toys. The female changeling would promise Abreen the entire Alpha Quadrant if she thought it would win the war. The new Defiant feels a bit sluggish. Chief O'Brien wishes Bashir would wipe that smile off his face. Go Fish just isn't Quark's game. There is no finer vintage of blood wine than 2309. Someone has to teach Federation officers the difference between a warp matrix flux capacitor and a self-sealing stem bolt. And Kira and Jake watch the wormhole open together. All right. So back to Sisko, right?
Well, not just right there. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I have to cover. Really loved the scene with Quark and Odo at the end when he says the goodbye. Aren't you going to say goodbye to me? That was such a special moment.
It's written all over his back, he says.
His back, yeah.
That was perfect.
Yeah,
but that was my favorite line.
Yeah.
That is my line. And to me,
brilliant.
It explains, to me anyway, the entire relationship. you know, and just what friendship means, and the idea that you know someone, if you know someone well, you know them in many different ways, the positives, the minuses, how they respond. People, even your best friends, don't always respond the way you wish they would respond.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's life. You know, we're all different, and we can't expect people to lockstep with our feelings and emotions exactly when we want them to. But also, it was what I got out of it, what I thought was, it didn't matter because Quark knew. It was written all over his back. You know, it's a funny line, but it's also true. He knew that relationship they had, and he knew that Odo knew it, you know? And so there's a lot in that line. That line has a lot of levels about human relationships and friendships. And to me, you know, looking back on Deep Space Nine, one of the things I think that we set out to do from the very beginning, and I think we wound up doing as well, if not better than any of the other shows in the franchise, is to focus on friendship and the various relationships with all different characters. And Odo and Quark definitely, you know, were in the top of those relationships.
Yeah, and Odo does that thing where he does that
the scoff.
Yeah, and it was layered with, so it might have well have been "I love you." The way he put so much on that sound effect, you know, it was a great moment. I'm sorry, Ryan, what were you saying?
Oh, I just wanted to add that it felt like Quark was not going there truly expecting Odo to say goodbye. Quark was going there to say goodbye to Odo.
Yes, very well said. That's right. That is correct.
As perfect, because that encapsulates their 7-year relationship. That's if it were any different, it would have been sweet, but not true to form.
And Ira, speaking of friends not, you know, reacting or saying what you want them to say, I felt that in the Admiral Ross, Sisko, and Martok moment, when they were at the scene of all, you know, of the destruction and the carnage, and they were going to drink the wine that they were celebrating about, or that they were talking about, and neither Sisko nor Admiral Ross wanted to drink any of it. You know, kind of not giving him the answer he wanted to hear, which is, yeah, great job, great victory, you know. But that sent a lot of, it made it more poignant because it just let me know about the seriousness of it. And you emphasized that with that scene. I felt just like, this is not a moment of celebration. This is actually, you mentioned today the guns are silent to preserve in peace what we won in war. And it just kind of highlights the, you know, you're happy about peace, but you realize you had to go to war to get it.
Yeah, I mean, all we kept talking about, I had forgotten, you know, the casualty figures, you know, in Cardassia alone were just so enormous, you know, that, you know, how do you drink a toast over that? Even though they're Cardassians, and I realize, like, you know, like Andy says, you know, they do have it coming to them on a certain level, you know, but it's just, you can't celebrate something like that. And also the fleet took so many losses. You know, the Federation alliance took so many losses. It's just like, you know, it was the one moment where I felt, and JG can do this and get away with it. You know, the character is not going to be hurt. But the Klingons really look childlike in that moment. You know, that, you know, oh, it's a great victory, and that's all that matters. And it's such a narrow view of life and death that I thought he was just like a child, you know, in his reaction. Oh boy, it's great. to think about the ramifications, really.
Yeah, and he did, and he ended up drinking straight from the bottle. He's like, "Well, fine, more for me."
Yeah, and the female changeling, I don't want to say predicted this, but she foresaw. She said, "We're going to make their victory feel like a loss." And by the way, Cirroc, when you said the scene of destruction, totally remind me of the beautiful song, "The Eve of Destruction," which would have been a great opening song for this final episode. Would have been excellent.
Ira, you mentioned about the special effects, and interestingly enough, as I was watching this, I didn't even need any battle scenes. It's almost like I didn't need to see any. They're great for the people that want to see ships, and there's a lot of people who are into those kinds of battles. But I think the stories really are just in the relationships, and that's what you've really fostered and developed so well in the show that I could care less if something explodes or ships collide into each other or whatnot. I can get that anywhere. But if there's no meaning behind it, then it doesn't really mean anything to me.
Can I add something to that?
Family. Yeah.
Is that, to me, the battle scenes have that extra weight because of those relationships and because of the stories. And when there's one point when they break through the lines of the Dominion and there was an explosion, but and then the Cardassians turned against the Dominion, Nog and me said yes at the same exact time. We both shouted yes at the same time. So that's what gives battles weight. It's not the battles for the battle's sake, but what the battle costs. And that's what makes them so interesting to watch. It worked in this episode, not so much in other episodes, because other shows, I should say.
Well, when I'm watching this, I really feel like the Dominion reminds me of the German forces in alliance with Italy and I think at one point Russia. And this kind of switching of sides reminded me of Russia switching sides and turning against Germany, and how that changed the outcome of the war.
No kidding. Otherwise, we'd all be speaking German.
Yeah.
People don't want to face that. But that, the fact is, if Russia had not,
that's legit,
Germany didn't spend all their resources trying to take, Stalingrad and Russia. I mean, the war would have been a whole different thing. It would have been a whole different thing. So
right, and so we needed that. We needed them to become allies the same way that we needed the Cardassians to switch over and become allies, because that changed this particular war. I kept hearing this Costamogen. Where did this Costamogen come from? Does it mean something that I don't know, or is it? How did you?
All I'll say, Cirroc, is I had the same response as you did. Costamogen. What the hell is Costa? It had to come from something, and I wish I could remember what it was. It's like, maybe we need to go through Terry Erdman's audio interviews for the Deep Space Nine companion and see if it was ever mentioned, because I kept hearing it too, and I'm thinking, where the heck does that come from? And I can't remember, and I don't know if it was a Hansi thing or what. And
yeah, because when I hear it, I think of La Cosa Nostra. Every time I hear it, I think La Cosa Nostra. Like, what does the mafia got to do with this? The mafia got a book out.
I wish I had an answer.
I had a theory that I just checked on, and I was wrong. I thought, well, maybe it's like something on like the Mexican Riviera or something, like Costamogen, or something like that. But nope. I actually Googled that, and what popped up was Costamogen. So nope.
What always pops into my head is some god from a Hawaiian volcano. It's a Costamogen.
Could be. Don't know. Can't say.
But I do love it because it's catchy. It makes you think about it. The moment that I thought was so special was when the founder tells Wei Yun, Wei Yun says, "I wonder what's under that green helmet."
Oh,
And
yeah.
she reduces him down every time she gets a chance. But she says, "A braver man than you."
Beautiful.
And I'm thinking, Ira's got to be laughing when he writes this stuff. There's no way he writes this down and it's not funny to him, because I think it's just so funny to me how you have these characters that are so demeaning to other characters. Kai Wynn does it to Ducat all the time. It happens to Damar. It happens to so many different people where they get kind of this condescending tone put to them.
They all grew up in the Bronx. That's how my whole life was as a kid. I mean, you were constantly friendship meant constant insults. You know, I mean, when I look at how my kids grew up, if they were treated the way we treated each other, it would have been, you know, there would have been psychologists involved, and the school would have been involved, and there would have been lawsuits, you know. So that's all that is. That's how you treat people you like and dislike the same way. It's constant, just, you know, put downs and put downs with truth. That's the thing that hurts, because it's a funny put down, but you know. It's got a ring of truth in that in the background, so it actually, that's why it stings so much. Yes, exactly.
Okay, so this was the big thing for me. Is you know, there's been that kind of debate about, you know, Avery was upset about dying in this episode, and now that I'm watching it, or that I've watched it, I kind of feel like he didn't die in this episode.
Well, he never was supposed to die.
Right. He doesn't die. I mean, he says they kill Sisko, but it doesn't feel like he's not dead. He's not killed. He's not even gone, really.
Yeah.
Right.
There's so much crap that's been said about this, you know, over the years. You know, it was never about him dying. It was always about making him a god. That's the first thing. Okay. We can discuss the fact that, yes, we didn't think it through on a certain level, and the fact that so much of the importance of having that black father and son relationship, you know, it was all about my feelings about TNG and Deep Space Nine. Let's face it, that's what that was about. It's like, you know, we were living in a world where Captain Kirk and Captain Picard were treated like gods by the fans, you know, and at that time, Sisko and Deep Space Nine definitely were not. I'm not saying we didn't have fans and that people didn't love us, but there was a difference.
Here, a hierarchy, yeah.
So it seemed like, and it wasn't something I had been planning all along, but when we got to the end, it seemed perfectly natural that Sisko follows the path that was laid out in the emissary, and that there has to be some kind of a loss in order for him to fulfill what was expected of him in the emissary. But never, I've seen things where people say Sisko was dead, and there was a whole thing about Avery getting upset that Sisko was dead. It wasn't about dead, and I know Avery might have been upset, but I had the conversation with Avery, and it was not an upset conversation. You know, it was a very kind of congenial, you know, two people working together conversation, like I had many times with Avery. He didn't come in with an attitude. He wasn't pissed off. He just he wanted to make sure that I heard him, but there was nothing unfriendly about it at all. And all he said is, look, it's important that me as a father, that we don't make it seem like I'm leaving my family. That's a very negative thing. And I said, geez, you know what, Avery, you are so right. And I've been so focused on this and it was a one-line change, basically. I'll be back, or whatever that is. It could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be yesterday, and that's all it was. That's all it was. And I keep seeing it being blown up into this thing. We were going to kill Sisko, and Avery came in and said, I don't want to die. And it was like, no, that's not what it was about. But I get that. But I think, okay, here's the deal. If we want to get
all right
into this. Deep Space Nine, from the very beginning, was a different show on a lot of levels than what came before it. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting was, the mission that Sisko was given to get Bajor into the Federation. Now, we've discussed this, and we talked about it in the documentary. At the end of the 7 years, Bajor isn't in the Federation. I know it's been in some of the novels that, fine, but Bajor did not become part of the Federation. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really, really an important statement to make. And part of the reason for this is, at its heart, and I know people are going to think this is me, bad-mouthing the franchise, which I'm not. I'm just trying to look at it with a clear perspective. Star Trek, a lot of what Star Trek is and what it represents, just the fact that it premiered in 1966, is about the American century. You know how you hear the term the American century, that the 20th century was the American century, right? That's American exceptionalism and all that stuff. And, we saved the world, we came in World War I and sealed that deal. And we're the ones who, saved, the world in World War II. Thank you, Russia, for, your help too. But, and this, that, and the other thing. But basically, even though, yes, you can argue that there's a liberal bias to Trek world, just the fact that there are human beings in the 24th century and people get along, that's certainly seems to be a liberal bias. But it's basically the values of the show are the values of America. The Federation is America.
Totally.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And to take it one step further, Gene Roddenberry said to me in a meeting, this isn't something I heard, he said it to me very clearly and very emphatically, that Jean-Luc Picard is John Wayne. That was in his mind who Jean-Luc Picard was. And what he meant by that was he has no doubt, he has no fears, he's a hero, plain and simple, and he has no character flaws that are going to keep him from doing the right thing. And what's the right thing? What's the right thing, that John Wayne does? He sells sincerity, America, and so that's okay. I get it. I'm not demonizing the franchise or trying to be overly negative about the franchise, but I thought there was room to do something else. And as I've said a million times, I didn't create this beast. That was Michael and Rick, and they set up this fantastic opportunity to approach this very important franchise in a different way and look at it differently and play it out differently. And I felt that was my mandate from the very beginning, when I was sitting in that baseball at the Dodger Stadium with Michael Piller before the show, when the show was still in script, the pilot was still in script stage. It hadn't been cast, nothing. And he said, in 2 years, I'm going to give you the show, right? You come back, I'm going to give you the show in 2 years. And it's going to represent your vision. He said it's going to be much closer to your vision than TNG was. So I thought, okay, so that means that the marching orders are, let's look at the franchise, not destroy the franchise or make fun of the franchise or take the piss out of the franchise. Let's just take it and look at it from a different point of view. And I thought that this thing with Sisko being the emissary, just the fact that we were doing religion on Star Trek, I thought was like really bold. And to look at it, where you have these negative, things about it, like Kai Wynn, but you have these positive things about it, like when we had Kai Opaka. It's up to you. Religion is not all good. It's not all bad. It's like everything else. It's what you put into it and what you take out of it. But Sisko was the emissary. How are we going to end this goddamn series? Everyone's in Starfleet uniforms and it's business as usual. And I didn't want Sisko, and we did a good job of this. I didn't want Sisko to go through 7 years and go through all this stuff where he's meeting all these different cultures and getting involved with all these different points of view, and still at the end of the day go back to his office and drink Earl Grey tea.
Right.
Earl Grey tea. What? Talk about, have you had Earl Grey tea? It's not the most, exciting thing in the world.
It's delicious.
So if you've met all these cultures and seen everything and been everywhere and done everything, and you're still drinking Earl Grey tea, you're not, there's something wrong here. You're not learning. You're teaching. It's easy to teach, but you're not learning. Right. And I wanted Sisko to learn. Yeah. I wanted all the characters to learn, and come away different, changed. So yes, making him a god or whatever you want to call a prophet, whatever, is a big change. And yes, it was unfortunate that, if I had to do it again, I may have had, a way to have brought Jake into it, find a way to give at least half a page to that. That was a mistake. I get it, and we try to rectify it with a couple of lines, and I knew it was over. So, it's up to the audience to decide. It's Sisko coming back. When is he coming back? It's like what you were saying, Cirroc. You come up with that story. The audience has to fill that in. But so that's why, I made him a god, and that's why I joked about it. But if we had ended the series, and we never were going to do it, and I did mention it to Rick, but again, I didn't mention it as a serious thing. If we had ended the series with, the idea that it all came from Benny Russell's head, and that, it was a sound stage, and this is all make-believe, the dream and the dreamer, yes, we could do it because of the franchise, and fans don't like it when you take, pull a rug out from under them. And
right, they bought into that world that you've built. They don't, remove it from them.
Right. But it's all of it's better than Earl Grey tea. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. It is. Mm-hmm. It is. And with the idea that you but you dealt with the subject of religion and family.
Very much family.
Tying it all together and really making people dynamic. I have to say, everybody, that your characters are layered. They're not just good people. They're not just bad people. There's a little bit of everything, and sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad. Sometimes the bad guy does a good thing and the good guy does a bad thing. It's like you mix it up. But making him into a god, or I would say more like a prophet, and what I walked away with was in the Old Testament, Elijah and Enoch are the two characters, or people that were in biblical characters that never died, supposedly ascended straight to heaven, and they actually never died. And they're the only two characters. So when I was watching this, I thought, okay, so Sisko is like Elijah or Enoch in this kind of way.
He's the third E, the emissary.
Yeah, the third E that doesn't die. And I really kind of enjoyed that moment where the only thing I had a little beef was him in the uniform in that state. I would think that he would have basically changed himself into wearing some kind of either African clothing or some kind of in that particular state at that, with the prophets. He no longer needs to represent the Federation, is what I mean.
That would have been good. That would have been good. That would have been nice. That would have been terrific. Yeah. If we had a George Lucas, we could go back and we could
add a vest on there.
Yeah.
It was also
put you in there. We could change it all.
No, I don't need to be in there. I thought the moment with Kira and Jake looking out of the window and the pullback. That was good. That was good. It didn't need to be. There didn't need to be any words spoken, and the pullback kind of lets you just, okay, there's Deep Space Nine right there. We're going to walk away from it. Yeah. It's still in your head, though. It still exists. It's like something's happening on the other side of the world right now. But I'm not there. So it exists, but I'm not seeing it. And so I feel like that's how you ended Deep Space Nine. You like, it's there. It's still going on. You just don't know what's happening anymore.
Absolutely.
And that last shot when Kira and Jake are looking out the window and the wormhole opens, to me, that made Sisko all the more accessible, because all they have to do is go in the wormhole and, he
lives there. He's in there.
Exactly. That's where he is. So he didn't feel inaccessible to me at the end of this episode.
Almost felt like he's always watching over them.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I think that's really cool. The other thing I wanted to say, Cirroc, that did surprise me, and there was a different vibe than I imagined it would be after all these years. What I had thought, having seen it all a long time ago, that last scene in my memory was you were much more vulnerable. And it was sadder in my memory, and it was less sad. You seemed more, and maybe it's just because of the years, and I know you now, and you're a man, and maybe that has bled into it. I don't know, but there was a kind of Zen patience I found in you. That you knew he was going to come back, and you were going to wait, and you were going to be there. And you knew that he knew that you'd be waiting. And so when Kira comes, I thought at the time she was there to comfort you, but this time it felt like less than comfort and more of like, I'm here with you. I'm also waiting too. You're not alone waiting, I'll be here too. And obviously Cassidy will be here and whatever. But
it's crazy that you're pointing that out, because I felt the same way. I felt like in my memory that moment was the sadness where I'm almost at tears, right? I'm just like trying to hold back the fact that I lost my father, essentially. But then now I'm watching it, and I felt like, no, there was more of a optimism. It wasn't a sadness. It wasn't I'm broken and I don't know what to do. There was more of a, okay, I'm here. I know what I signed up for. Mm-hmm. We walked through this the whole way. We, step by step, I saw him take the position of the role of the emissary, and I know what it's all about. I know he gets in those visions. Even when Cassidy had the vision, I kind of had the moment where I was like, can you hear me? And there was an understanding that this thing can happen. It's not like, oh, what's going on here? I don't know. She's blanking out. It's, it's more like, hey, there's probably some vision stuff happening because I've seen this thing before, right?
That last scene felt like we'll get through this together to me when I saw that. And I felt this when I remember it as being a sad scene. And it might just be because that's what people say about it. But yeah, I agree. When I saw it, I was like, oh, they don't look that sad. They look strong. They look like they just went through hell and back and are ready for the next chapter.
Is a good adjective. Yes, strong is the word. I didn't remember Jake being strong in that moment, but yeah, that's what I felt more.
He got it from his dad.
Yep.
I did also like that you added the moments of Kira being in charge. There was just something there where it felt like, okay, so Kira is left in charge, and so she's in charge of Deep Space Nine now, and it felt like, oh, it's in the right hands. Number one, she, who's a better custodian of the Deep Space Nine than Kira would be. So we know it's in the right hands. But I also like the moment where she goes up to Quark and she's like, no betting on the. She's like, there's a new.
And he's like, yeah, right.
And I just love that as well. I thought that was just a classic moment. It gave us it went back to the stability that we know Deep Space Nine to be, because all of this change, Worf's going over here, O'Brien's going over there. But then you gave us a little bit of, but Kira's here. And Bashir's here with Dax
and Jake.
Yeah, and Jake's here.
And Nog is a lieutenant now.
Right. And so there was like, it still moves on. Like it'll still be here and move forward. Cassidy's there, right? She's about to have a baby. And
it's true.
So there's a whole lot of stuff going on. And a lot of people are disappointed with final episodes. I remember when Seinfeld did their final episode, everybody was up in arms. Oh, that sucks. It didn't tie up anything. Did you get any negative feedback for this, or were you relatively people were satisfied that you gave us closure on so many issues?
Can we talk about this on the other side? We've got to jump to our free for all. Sorry, I don't mean to cut that off, but that way everybody will get to hear the answer if that's okay with all of you. All right. And so before we hop over to the other side, we want to give a very special thanks, of course, to Homer. Some of these people have been with us since like season 2 or 3. Homer Frizzell, Dr. Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, Carmen, a.k.a. Skillet, Timothy Baum, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arucan, Titus Mohler, Darlena Marie, John Mann, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anna Post, Rex A. Wood, Anil O. Palat, Erika Stroem, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, DQ, Neal Akasaka, Justine Norton-Kertson, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, Radek Orszewski out, of course, in Southwest Poland, Henry Unger, My Live from Tokyo, Matt Boardman, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner. Let's go hit that free-for-all, and we'll get Ira's answer to that excellent question in just a second. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hey, everybody, welcome back to The Seventh Rule. This is the free-for-all. Malissa, myself, Cirroc, and Ira are back. Joining us are Anna Post, Eve England, Anil O. Palat, hanging out, outside of Deep Space Nine, just like Faith Howell is. Tierney C. Dieckmann is here. Carrie Schwent has a beautiful sunset behind her, I think, either sunset or sunrise. Yep. Goldie Scott is showing off his background as well. Matt Boardman is also floating around Deep Space Nine. Grandpa One is in a field of tulips or something.
Poppies
are usually more orange. I was confused. Mai is live from Tokyo with an awesome shirt, Seventh Rule shirt. Titus Mohler has rejoined the collective. Welcome back. Susan B. Gruner is here. She's going to drop some knowledge on us. And Katie Carr is wearing a purple shirt, but I can't tell what it is.
It's Jadzia.
Oh, nice. Oh, we were talking about her.
Nice.
All right. So when we left off, Cirroc was asking Ira a question. Can you want to re-ask it, Cirroc?
Yeah. I don't know if you said hi to Faith Howell too, but Faith's here with us. Just throw that in there. But yeah, my question was, and you know what? I had another question as I was thinking of this question. Ira, when I watch these episodes, I think of what happens to some of the stuff that I see that are just memorable. One of the things that I thought of was the dartboard. If you know where the dartboard ended up. And the other one item that I saw as I was watching this was the Costramogen. Yeah, the book itself.
I think I might. That book might be just a couple of yards away from where.
Oh wow!
I'm not sure. I have a couple of books. I'm not sure.
Your address was. Can you tell me that one more time, please?
Is it up for bid?
But well, mum's the word on that. I don't know if I have that exact book, but I have a couple. I know I have a couple of books that
and the dartboard, the famous dartboard.
Dartboard, I don't know. I don't know what happened to that.
Baseball?
We don't know about the baseball either.
I always thought that Avery got the baseball.
He says he never got the baseball. He says he's upset that he never got the baseball.
Did he say it with a wink, though?
Yeah, I wondered about that baseball. The last person that was caught on camera with it was Nana. So.
Yeah.
I know. I love that we got the baseball in there. I'd forgotten that the baseball showed up again at the.
That was great.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we got it.
So if Avery doesn't have it, I don't know how. Where would that baseball be? I don't think anyone would have had the stones to have taken it without checking with Avery ahead of time. I mean, I just assumed he got that ball.
Well,
he says he does not. He says the captain's uniform he has his uniform. He doesn't have the ball.
Somebody should ask Joe Longo.
I wish
next generation, how many times have people stole the captain's chair?
Yeah.
Patrick Stewart said it was several times.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a big thing to have to smuggle out of the Paramount lot.
Big pockets.
Yeah, right.
Very big pockets, yeah. So my question, Ira, was, people always talk about final episodes where they usually hate final episodes. I know that Seinfeld got a lot of flack because they thought it didn't do any justice to the show and it was left up in the air, no really wrapping up of things. What was the response like? I know you probably don't care what the response is because you don't do the show for anybody but yourself, like you said, but what was the response like afterwards? This show aired.
I have no idea. I really don't have a clue, and I'm trying to think back if I had a clue at the time. I mean, it's just the same answer all the time, Cirroc. It's like by season 7, by season 6, I mean, the fans. I just didn't know. I had no contact with fans. I wasn't going to the conventions. So I have no idea.
Wow. Plus it's over now. So you're like, I'm already done. There's nothing you can do about it. So, I don't care if you like it or not.
Yeah.
No, that was, this episode was fantastic. And, the amount of tears, I feel myself crying over and over again, but I'll let everybody else go into their take on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think everybody got. If you guys all saw it recently, then we're all kind of a mess right now. I'll tell you that much.
Mm-hmm.
On a post, hello, thank you for joining us while you're clearly working. We appreciate you taking the time.
Hello.
It's so cool that you still join us anyway. Have you watched the episode recently? And if so, what'd you think?
I did. I really love this episode. I actually think that DS9 got a better send off than a lot. They got the send off they deserve. Like it felt like you were saying goodbye, but you still had the story and you still had the continuation of things. And somehow Miles is the only person who didn't like end up hurt and destroyed, because all of the couples end up breaking up except for Miles and Keiko, and they go back home to Earth. But which I guess kind of vindicated him for all the times that poor Miles is distraught. But yeah, I love how they tie up the story, but there's still things that need to be done that don't get explained. Like, Cardassia is going to have to be rebuilt. When is Sisko coming back? Like, does Odo ever come back to seek Kira, even though he joined the Link? What happens with that? Poor Kira has lost every boyfriend ever. But it still feels like a good finish, even with all of those to be continueds. So I really love it. And I like how they did justice to all of the supporting guest stars as well, with like Vic and Nog and everybody.
Totally, everybody got their moments. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this: at the time, there was more of a chance, certainly, of Sisko coming back. That was clearly open-ended, but in my mind, in Hans's mind, and I think the staff's mind as well. Odo that was it for Odo and Kira. Odo was
right.
He was, he was going back to that pile of goo, and that was going to be more than enough for him, to take his attention and what they're going to do. So that relationship in my mind was the one relationship that was truly over. In my brain, Sisko had to come back, because you did such a great job with the family and the Black father and son, and really being there for his son and raising his son. And I really, really can't have it in my brain that Sisko is an absentee father for the baby. Like, I can't.
Exactly.
I can't have it like ruin all of that great family with Jake and then have him be the absentee Black father for the new baby. So he has to show back up.
Yep.
He'll be back yesterday.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we also
or
didn't
maybe in 2 years. Yeah.
We also didn't touch on that Odo gave Kira his bucket. That was the cutest thing I've ever seen.
Oh my God.
That moment. Eve England is actually a collector of buckets. But how did you feel about that's what they do in the UK. It's weird. How did you feel about this episode?
Oh yeah, it was. I put a tweet out earlier, and it's just so bittersweet. It's got so much fun stuff. It's got all the resolutions that you not all of them, but enough that you feel, that it's the end of the season. But there's still. It's nice to think, as Anna was saying, that actually that it is continuing after the show. So even though we might not see it, it's still kind of happening somewhere. We're just, we just need to wait for that to be written and shown on TV later on. But a few things struck me with this. I felt the whole Sisko going away and the way that it ended with Jake there. To me, it was just it just seemed far more poignant, I think, this time watching it. And then thinking back at the parallels then to The Visitor, and how actually The Visitor effectively come true for Jake. I was just, and not that I'd forgotten that happened, but it just really struck me this time. And I just felt so sad for Jake. And the fact that he didn't even have that goodbye that Cassidy had was just so tragic. And I wondered, actually, I was going to ask Ira, was that sort of just how it sort of came together at the end with the way that the story was? Or was there a sort of a deliberate way of trying to link that back to what we saw in The Visitor and give that, because it almost gives The Visitor much more punch when you know what happens at the end?
Well, yeah, I mean, clearly, the Visitor was in our minds. That ending wasn't chosen because of The Visitor. It was chosen for other reasons. But yeah, there was all I would say is, again, we don't know. The Visitor kind of, tells you that story. This story is still to be written. We don't know what's going to happen with Sisko. He could be back yesterday, as he said, or never, or whatever. So it's much more open-ended. But yes, but also, The Visitor was what, season 3?
3 or 4.
Was that? Must have been 3 or 4, not later than 4. I think it was
4, episode 2 of season 4. Yeah.
Okay, so very beginning of 4.
Mm-hmm.
Jake was a different character by season 7. He had grown up. He was an older guy at that point, and in a way, if the last episode had been a season 4 episode, we only had gone 4 seasons, that would have been a tougher, a tougher thing to do. But Jake, Jake had come a long way. And though obviously there's, it's a bittersweet ending for Jake. I mean, we were talking before you guys came on that I found the ending a lot less sad than I did back in 1999, where it did seem like that moment of the two of them standing there looking at the window, that was a very melancholy ending. I found it less melancholy. I found plenty about the show that was melancholy and all those goodbyes, but not that. I felt Jake was stronger than I remembered, that Kira was strong with him. I felt that they were waiting. They weren't mourning the ending of something, that they were going to wait, that they were strong. He wasn't going to wait alone, So I found it less sad than I remembered, actually. The only thing in the damn episode that I found that wasn't sad, actually, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And one just point on that Anna just mentioned about Miles. I did love the fact that in his montage, I don't think Keiko featured once.
That was a mistake. That was a mistake. We knew when we did it. Yes, and even when he leaves, he's leaving alone. He's not.
Yeah.
They must already be aboard. They already have their seatbelts on and are drinking pina coladas, I guess.
Yeah,
but yes, the whole Keiko thing. The whole 7 years of Keiko was not our finest hour, and that's not even with hindsight. We kind of knew it at the time. But we just couldn't get, and it wasn't like, I was married, I had kids, it wasn't like we were all unable to relate, but we couldn't get that relationship going, and the investment in, that's why I came back to the goddamn franchise. That's the thing, as I've said many times, that I said to Michael at the Dodger game. It's like, if you let me take O'Brien and Amoros was his name at the time before he became Bashir, and you let me turn that into like a really strong friendship like we haven't seen on the franchise in terms of not being based on rank or the fact that they're on the bridge together and blah, 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 but just two guys who don't have anything in common who become friends. So I had a big investment in that, and that kind of, I think, blinded me to the relationship, the family relationship. Mea culpa.
Yeah,
Always.
I mean, like I said, I get the point that because it was quite funny, and it kind of that was one of my favorite moments in some way, because it sort of cemented how his relationship was with Julian, and I really love that. Like, even though I do appreciate the point about Keiko generally, but I think it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to see more of Keiko. He's not going to see his buddy anymore.
Yeah, she's not in the past. She's in his present and future.
But I do think that I like the exchange that they had when they were talking about who was going to keep the Alamo model. When Bashir is like, "Don't worry about it. I'll figure it out. I'll make space for it." I love that. That sounded like two friends actually really going arguing about something.
When O'Brien found that little toy soldier, and it led into that montage that just knocked me into next week.
After he ripped, for losing it. So
I mean, it was just like, Ira, do you remember? Because to me, that was just such a perfect way. It set off all those memories in O'Brien, which then just flowed into everybody else's moments. Do you remember coming up with that, or what the genesis was of that? Because I thought it was a perfect way to launch us into that.
Well, I mean, came up with it because we had made such a big deal about that damn Alamo diorama, or whatever you want to call it. at the
it's
end,
not a toy.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was what's going to get us into the memories. You can't just have someone, eating a steak and then stop with the fork halfway to his mouth and then suddenly, so there had to be something that set it off. And the fact that, because when you think, especially with O'Brien, who got, we all know, every season there'd be the episode where he went through such hell all the time. And to have that friendship, that especially a guy he hated at the beginning, who just did such, oil and water that you would never think that they would come together. And then, plus he's the engineer, so he's so exact. Engineers have to be so exact, and they're so into, math and, how things work. Things have to fit together. And then to be able to just act like a lunatic with your buddy on a hollow suite and just be, not care about any of that. That is and also being a father and being a husband, because as a husband, you fail so much because you're a man, and, men are just good at failures, especially when it involves women. That's that's just the truth. We have flaws, built in. So to have that thing that can set him off on that kind of memory, it just worked. It's so silly and so small, and yet, it's the key.
It's perfect. Anil is hanging out with us, and we're so glad you joined us. Did you get a chance to watch this episode recently, and what'd you think of it?
I did. I think, like a lot of people have said, what makes this episode so unique or different, and it's kind of what makes the series so special, is that what Sisko says at the end, that we may never be in the same place at the same time, but we'll always have a part of us here. And it just feels like Deep Space Nine is kind of like that. Like we're watching a window in time. Like these are not archetypes like Kirk, there are a couple of Kirks and like 15 Spocks now, but there's only one Sisko to me. There's only one Kira. These are, they're so nuanced that they feel very real, all the characters. And like we just saw a part of their lives and we don't know what's going to happen after, but you do feel like when you have Kira and Jake looking out that window that everything is still happening, which is a nice feeling. It doesn't just cut you off right at the end. And I think that's why the show endures, because we're all wondering what happened. And sometimes like we want to go back to that place, which is Deep Space Nine. So you watch the series or those particular episodes and you're transported back to that time, whatever time that was for you when you're watching. So I love it. I think the one thing that stands out is Kira and Jake at the end. And Cirroc mentioned it a few times, that relationship wasn't very explored, but it does pop up, especially in The Visitor, how nurturing Kira is to Jake. There's definitely a bond there. So I was wondering why that was chosen as the last shot. I mean, it seems very natural, but I think it's an important shot. And I was wondering, why that particular one.
Well, I think I know I've told this story more than once, not here, but in other places and in other books probably. But from throughout the entire season, I told the staff the last shot is going to be Quark in the bar and everything's back to normal and he is the linchpin. Everything could change, but he, the bartender is always the bartender and the bar is always open and Morn is always sitting there. And that would be the message of the show is ending, but life is going to go on, right? I said that for months. That was like a done deal. And then we started to write the last episode and I said, oh man, that's just not good enough. It's like, what? What? It's like, nope. And Hans is going, well, but, we've talked about this and this is what it is. And, okay, what do you want it to be? I don't know. So it got so bad, I was driving my wife insane. It's like it got close to the end and I don't know what the ending is and I don't know what the last shot is. And she goes, it's the last shot. I said, it's the last shot of 7 years. It's, she goes, that's it. Enough complaining. I'm taking you to Santa Barbara for the weekend. And you're going to come up with what the last shot is in Santa Barbara. I said, I can't go to Santa Barbara. It's like, she goes, well, you guys are not working on the weekends at this point. You're not in that rough shape with the script. You're going to Santa Barbara. We're going to Santa Barbara. So we went to Santa Barbara. I can't remember. I don't think we took the kids. I have to ask her. I don't think we took the kids. I think it was just us. And anyway, so for the whole weekend, not a goddamn thing comes to mind. And we're sitting in restaurants and we're walking on the beach and I'm going, it's not coming, baby. It's like, it's not happening. And it's like, it'll happen. And then we were literally driving home. And if we went back onto the PCH, the 101, I could probably find the exact spot or at least close to the exact spot where it was, where I was driving, and then just like complete the whole shot just came to my mind that it had to be Jake. It just had to be Jake. And, it wasn't Nog, it wasn't Cassidy, because that made it too small in a way and it had to represent the entire show. And who else but Kira, who's now in charge of the station? Who else but Kira, who had this relationship with Sisko that started out hostile and blah, 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 all that stuff. And then he was the emissary, which is a big thing. It's the son of the emissary for Kira as well. It had to be the two of them. And I saw the whole thing in my head, and the shot of the Deep Space Nine getting smaller and smaller in the distance. I could tell you the whole thing happened in like literally 8 seconds. And I said to Laura, I said, I have it. I know what it is. And I said it to her, and she goes, see, I told you you'd get it. That was it. She said, oh, yeah, see, I knew you'd get it. I told you. It was like, yep, that was it. So it just had to be. And I cannot conceive of another ending for that series except for Jake and Kira. I mean, without a doubt. And the fact that, we'll always be, a part of us will always be on Deep Space Nine, but Deep Space Nine is now a little dot, and, it exists in our memories. That's it.
Yeah.
Loved it. Was that it for you, Anil? Did you have anything else?
Yeah, no, thanks for answering my question, too. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
Tierney C. Dieckmann is here as well, wearing an awesome Seventh Rule shirt. How are you today? And what'd you think of this episode? You probably watched it, right?
Oh, yes. A couple of times. Had to just, oh my God, I've just a smattering of notes. I've had to separate everything, because this is the culmination of so much, and I couldn't decide what the cliche, but spoke to me the most with this. And looking at what can be done in 90 minutes of network television, and what this what culminated with this. And I think this still, even today, maybe even more so, considering, and this might just be personal bias, how entertainment has declined since 1999, is probably one of the best achievements as a finale, and especially given the caliber of the show altogether, that we as an audience could have asked for, especially in Star Trek, because this is, as far as I can tell, the only one that our characters have an honest-to-God send-off, a real goodbye. This isn't just Alien of the Week and then suddenly, it's the last episode. What? I mean, so we get to see where everyone is going. And what's great about this too, as much as only 90 minutes can be really limiting, and that must be, as a writer, extremely frustrating, but at least then this is what you have to work with, and you can limit things. What was left out seemed perfect, as opposed to just what was put in, because yes, they get their send-offs, but you're not patronizing your audience with, this is exactly what's happening, and these huge exposition dumps of everything that's going on. We get some not vague but minor details of where O'Brien's going, what Worf is doing, and then we get to consider, and not just because, the series is over and we have to think about it. Well, what are they doing now? It's wow, they could be doing this now, because these characters are real to us by this point, and we get to really enjoy thinking about it. Where's Odo? What is he teaching the Link about solids, about his experience? I mean, the communication he must have had in that brief link with the female changeling, that must have been so strong that in an instant, and her being cured was just, she's going to call the dogs off, and that's it. Him going back to the Link, that exchange, and him curing them and teaching them was enough for her to let go of everything that she was doing in her final hours, because she knew her race was dying and she was dying, and she had gotten really damn evil by that last episode. Holy crap. She is terrifying. And it's really a perfect balance for what we could get. And you guys did an incredible job. But I did want to ask you, Ira, is there anything that you wish you had either been able to include, or something that you really didn't like about the episode that still kind of sticks with you?
Well, I mean, there's a ton of things that I wish we had more time. I wish we had more money. I wish we had more production time and more money. And then more time, I guess, outside of 90 minutes. But it's production time and money that I really wish we had. Yeah. But that, that's just me. And it's exactly the same way I felt when we did it. I mean, the same exact frustrations I had with, as I said earlier when we were speaking, the stuff on Cardassia, I wish breathed a little bit more. And I'm less interested in space battles than I am in people battles, and that had to be done so perfunctory, more or less. Luckily, we had, if we didn't have Andy and Nana and Casey, and whoever played Mila, who was terrific, that actress who played the maid, the governess, whatever. But if we didn't have those three people down there who could sell it so well, we really would have been in trouble if we had one bucky actor who couldn't pull their weight. But so there's stuff like that bothers me. We've talked about it. I wish a lot of things. I wish there had been a little more Keiko and O'Brien. I wish there would have been a little bit more Nog and Jake. I wish, like all of us do. I wish for more. I wish, but the thing I would say is that for the whatever of those feelings I had watching it again, they really were basically in the first 45 minutes. And in the second 45 minutes, I was, I wore these shades today for a reason, because I was, I was getting emotional watching the show. And the last thing I wanted to do was to be on this Zoom with my eyes tearing up and whatever, So the last 45 minutes, I was totally like, just another fan watching the show, and my heart going out to all these characters, and when I see Renee and Aaron and Louise and Barry Jenner, who's gone, Barry, who came up to me at the wrap party. We had given everyone these Deep Space Nine rings. That was the final gift. And inside the ring, it said, "Lest we forget." And Barry Jenner came up to me crying. This man in his 50s was literally in tears. And he said, I know where that comes from. My dad and I used to watch She Wore a Yellow Ribbon with John Ford directed with John Wayne, and he's retiring from the Army, and his men give him a watch, and he opens the watch and it says, "Lest we forget." And he just loved, thinking of his dad and being a kid.
Yeah.
So, seeing those guys, it's tough. Now remembering.
Yeah. Speaking of which, am I seeing some Nog ears in front of you, Ira?
Nagi's here.
Oh,
He's a little camera shy, but we get glimpses of his ears.
Yeah, well, Nog. Well, it's. I could,
oh.
Not
yes.
Nog. It can only be away from Daddy for so long. He's very attached. He's constantly can't get a good night's sleep because Nog is always on me at night.
Oh.
Love it. Tierney, did you have any more for us?
Other than it was a bad idea to wear eye makeup today.
I thought about that when I saw it. Good luck.
But I think just the last thing was that I love that you deified Sisko. That as his fans, of course, we and I don't know about anybody else, but I feel like a fool lovingly plenty of times going over all of this of these are fictional characters, but I have no friends, so these are my friends. Love them so much as fans, we deify them, and for him as a captain, and at the time as the first Black captain, to make him a god, a prophet, and he's going to learn from the prophets as well. And I mean, it's perfect. It's perfect. There is no other Sisko. We've got, like Neal said, like 20 Spocks. The real Spock, please stand up. But there is only one Captain Sisko, and he is a deity to us. And you did that, and Avery did that, and the rest of the cast did that. And like I said in the last episode, without like Casey and Nana and Andy, those performances and you guys wouldn't be what it is. And it is. It still is, and it always will be. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, we definitely discussed that earlier. The whole, it's when you're the bastard stepchild. You say, okay, Kirk and Picard, at that point, Janeway was still in her infancy. It was only 2 seasons, but Kirk and Picard, they were the captains. And, at the time, and Cirroc, you might remember this, it seemed like every other month there was something to like really get up our nose. Like there'd be some magazine would put out a photo of the Star Trek captains and it would be, they'd leave Avery out or something, or, whatever it was. There was the way to always get us up in arms. And it was like, it's like, screw you, we're making the captain a god. We're making him a god. Yeah. That's exactly, if it wasn't for TNG, if it wasn't for the franchise, I don't know if that's how it would have ended, necessarily. But it was like, nope, that's what we're doing. That's the thing. He's become part of Bajor now. It's forget the Federation.
Yeah, Sisko wins. That's it. Malissa, you had something that you mentioned in the chat that would you like to share with everybody about what Aaron did with that Deep Space Nine ring?
Oh, that's the ring that he proposed to me with.
Oh yeah. Wow. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm. And we all miss Aaron terribly. This was his vision, of course, and we're just about done with it. We are going to be doing more Deep Space Nine coverage. We're going to do the season 7 review and then the series review and then another episode that's like a special one. But as we've been coming towards the end, I've been thinking more and more about Aaron and just like, this is it. We are fulfilling his dream together. Mm-hmm. I'm wearing the shirt that I wore for our very first Deep Space Nine episode. But thank God for Aaron Eisenberg, right?
Yep. Exactly.
Lest we forget is the right quote.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It certainly is.
Mm-hmm.
He saved my life.
Yeah.
All right. Malissa will come back, I'm sure, when she wants. Let's see who's next. Carrie Schwent is next. Hello, Carrie. Welcome.
Hello. Finales, man, they get me every time. It does. The ones that you really get into, no matter how many times I watch them, they still get me at the same spots. And I'm gonna. Sorry, I left the cat the other day, so I'm gonna try to keep it together.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna focus on my haiku for a minute, and hopefully that will settle things down. It was extraordinarily difficult to create it because the episode is so friggin' huge. So I just decided to treat it as if it was an episode in the middle of any given season. So here it goes. Dominion War ends. Odo fixes the Great Link. Pow race trapped for good.
Yeah.
And I have couple of tiny nitpicks, and then I decided to focus on all the things in the episode that made me smile, and then I will end with a question for Ira. So a couple of tiny nitpicks, and so we've got Grumpy Bear. Here he goes. Morn doesn't get to say anything, not even one teeny little word at the end. Just one word. He doesn't have to say a whole sentence. I just wanted one word, something.
We talked about it, but we decided not to.
Wow. So it was on the table for a second.
It was on the table for a second.
Yeah. And Esri did not have to be on that final mission. She's a counselor. She has no business being on the Defiant, let alone on the bridge. Maybe that's just me, unless she's got other skills, but she primarily came to Deep Space Nine as a counselor.
Well, she's there to help everyone through the trauma of war.
Yep.
That's kind of what I thought. But
I wish I'd had one.
Yeah. Whether she would be on the bridge is a total legitimate, beef. I get that. But that's TV, and
you gotta have she's the main cast. You gotta see her for a second. And I wrote down a bunch of things that made me smile. I'll whip through them and we can talk about them afterwards. But Molly and Miles talking about the Alamo. But Daddy, I let you play with my toys.
Yeah.
She gave it right back to him. You can definitely tell she is Keiko's daughter coming back with the.
She's like, then how come you didn't tell Bashir? And she's like, if you're going to teach, then how come you didn't tell Bashir?
Does that mean we have to stay? and Damar is a huge flirting with Mila when she's scolding Derek over you didn't finish your food, but look at Damar, this big, handsome, specimen of a man. He finished all of his food.
When he said up, that cracked me up.
Up. Now when he took the bite of the food, the way he did it, he wanted like.
And then you waved at her. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Giant flirt. And Garrett's glee over killing Wayoon. He enjoyed that probably a little too much, I think. But I was right there with him. And then, I wish you hadn't done that. That was his last clone. You can see the wheel turning. He's going, yes, score. And Worf, when they're in.
Carrie, did you notice that the female changeling actually had a really sweet moment there? She said, Wayoon, the only solid I ever trusted or something. She actually softened, and Salome really showed off her acting chops there too.
Yeah, I did notice that. And then later on in Vix, when everybody's suggesting where Mao should go to live, Worf is constantly chiming in with Minsk. Every other suggestion is Minsk.
Minsk.
But parents are Russian. He grew up in Russia. He loves Russia. Yeah. Minsk clearly must be his favorite city in all of Russia. So he was insisting. And and Quark saying that he doesn't like change. I can relate. I get way too attached to TV shows, and I'm over the last 2 years as a Cubs fan, I'm really struggling with the change of players getting traded away. It's been very, very hard for me. Any talk, like trade negotiation talks, I'm like, la, 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 I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I want all of my people to stay. And same thing with TV shows. You want them to keep going forever because you want to know what they're gonna do next.
Mm-hmm.
And Quark and Odo's last conversation in the hallway there before he gets in, and he crosses his arms again and gets in one last as he's walking away. The two of them over the course of the series was just so special, fun to watch, and just seeing the way Quark could chink away, crack away at Odo's sternness. And I loved in that his montage. You saw the two of them on, I can't remember what the name of the episode was, but when they were stuck on the side of that hill and they were having their slap fight.
Wonderful episode. Yeah.
Yeah, the ascent.
Mm-hmm. And all of the cameos in Vix. Ira, I spotted you immediately because I've watched enough of these episodes and enough interviews with you. I recognized the back of your head like immediately. And spotting Casey and Jeff, having seen them out of makeup on the Star Trek cruises, I recognized them immediately. I couldn't tell if there was anybody else in there, and I was trying to look, but
all the writers were there. Bradley, David, Ron, Renee, Hans, all of them were there. JG was there. I don't know who else.
Was Robert there?
Yeah, one of these days I'll have to watch it again to try to spot.
You mean Bob O'Reilly?
No.
Yeah, I was trying to spot people. Yeah. Oh yeah. Maybe not because he was gone by then. No, I tried to recognize them and I couldn't. There are a few of the writers I didn't.
They put Robert in the last episode that he was in, the one that
where he
already got his hand on
his moment.
Camera time.
The dead guy or the dying guy.
Yeah.
All right.
And my favorite thing about the montages at the end was tiny little baby Jake sitting on the pier, all little and pocket sized.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That was so cute.
You were so darn adorable back then, Cirroc.
Back then.
Now. But he was adorable back then.
Sorry.
A different kind of adorable now. That's all
adorable. But I have a two-part question for Ira. The thing about no Jadzia has me salty, and the Wynn and Dukat scenes. Why did they have to be so spread out? Because it's clear that the timeline of those scenes took place over a much shorter period of time. It didn't make much sense why they were so spread out.
Well, the easy one was that we were not allowed to use Jadzia's image, and I called a number of people to see if we could get some leeway even for one shot, and I was told no, and I was not happy at the time, but there was nothing I could do about it. So, and I didn't like it then, and I don't like it now. But that's just the way it is. In terms of the timeline with Dukat and Kai Wynn, yeah. that's probably true. There were things that I would have kind of moved around a little bit looking at it again, but I'm told I'm often too negative when I rewatch things, so I try not to get into that. To be positive, I thought the scenes with Wynn and with Dukat were extremely strong, and I thought that Alimo went out with a bang. I thought he was terrific. I thought
the Power Race turned him into a Sith.
Yeah,
he used the Force.
In spite of the fact he got punched in the nose by Avery by mistake on the last day, which was
that day, huh?
Holy shit! I was on
that was that day.
I was on the set for that. Wow. And when he went to the hospital, we thought that was it. He would never come back. And I got to say, Alimo sucked it up. And a few hours later, he was back, and they were able to finish it. But wow.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I just thought the two of them were terrific.
Oh yeah.
And that's what worked for me. But I hear what you're saying, and I get it.
That's why Eve England has such a huge crush on Dukat, because he's a tough guy who can take a punch.
I'm in the Dukat too, don't forget.
Right.
He kills the owl.
However, Faith Howell says, I'll take your Dukat and I'll raise you a Dumar, I should say. Faith, how are you today? And did you love this episode?
I did, and I took pages and pages and pages of notes because I had to be prepared for this one better than any we've done so far. So, but where to start? There's just so much. So I think I have to say first that back to, this is the only good ending of a show I've ever seen. I mean, any Star Trek, any other show, it's the only one that I feel like we got real closure on. And now I'm spoiled because no other show is ever going to give me what I want. And so, Ira, thank you so much. I know there's probably flaws in it, and you probably see them way more than the rest of us ever will. But I love it. It's beautiful. But I do often skip this one just because you watch through the whole series and you don't want it to end. Well, if I don't watch the last episode, it doesn't end, and I can go back to Emissary and watch it all again. And so I did have to sit down and really focus on this episode. And it was, a relatively low number rewatch compared to some of the other episodes. Sorry, my son's coming through with Peppa Pig, of course, as I unmute. I did have a couple of things that just made me laugh. So we start off with the whole Ezri and Julian finally getting together. Yay for them. But then they talk about how don't tell O'Brien. And of course, O'Brien knows as soon as he sees Julian, which totally makes sense. I mean, best friend would know. But Ezri clearly told Worf as well. And come on now. She's the one that said don't tell. And she can hear me. So I laughed at that. I loved the scenes from Mila and Damar and Garrick, especially the way they all played off of each other. That little boop boop that really got me. It still gets me every time. Ira, I don't know if you know this. I told everybody last week. I remember when this aired, and the novelization of the final episode came out a few days or a week before the episode aired, and I had it in hand and had blown through all of it. I don't know how I did any schoolwork that week. I was probably 8th grade, and I tore through it because I had to know what was going on in that basement. So you had me wrapped around.
I don't even remember the novelization. I must have it, but I guess there was a novelization.
It was good, and I think there were a couple of small things that were different. But it was really good. And I loved especially the description I remember from the novel about how Sisko tackles Dukat at the end. And I think it is, as I remember, it's been many years since I've read it, but as I remember it, it equates it to like a baseball player running, trying to make that last. And it was just such a perfect connection to the baseball theme. Also, I have to say to Eve, because I have been holding my tongue for weeks and weeks, when we talk about who was worse, Ducat or Wynn, I couldn't say anything because I didn't want to spoil Cirroc. But now that we've seen it, I can say I really think that Ducat is worse than Kai Wynn, simply because of that last minute redemption. She says, emissary the book. She is accepting that position of reverence to him. She's not calling him, hey, Ben. She's really respecting him. And she's taking his side. And how would he have known without that? So in my mind, that redeems her just enough that he takes the lead in worst character or most evil character in the series.
Well, also maybe the Paw Wraiths are a good judge of character, right? If they picked the most evil one, maybe there's our answer.
Well, also, you just have to accept the fact that as evil as Kai Wynn is, and she is, I would not turn my back on her for a second. She was not responsible for the death of millions of people that Gul Dukat was complicit in. And, she's not quite, they're both narcissists, but I think she knows herself probably a little bit better than Ducat, who's sold himself a bill of goods, and also quite a number of our fans, it seems, a bill of goods. I just don't understand. It bugged me so much at the time that it wasn't like we were getting that much fan mail or fan communication, but the love for Ducat just, I love Alimo's acting, and I think he was terrific, but you got to separate it, man. You got to separate that guy. That guy belonged in hell, which is where we sent him, which is where I wanted to send him.
Exactly.
Do you have anything else for us, Faith?
Two more small things. So I feel like even after watching the documentary, which I assume maybe we'll be talking about later, but I feel like Sisko's comment to Cassidy about, he'll be back maybe a year from now, maybe yesterday. I feel like that was a promise, and she's definitely waiting. Jake's probably still waiting. I'm still waiting. When the rest of my life, I'm going to be waiting for this. So, and even in the season 8, I was still waiting. So I would love to see that. I know, the rest of us, I'm sure, would agree. That would be amazing to see, even if it was an animated series. That would be all right.
Totally.
Just dropping some ideas here. And then my last thing is I wanted to bounce off of what a lot of you guys have said so far. I loved this ending because it felt so real. Just like the whole series, we really relate. These characters feel so human. Even the ones that aren't human feel so relatable. And even their departure from this space station where we've come to love and spend our time together, it felt just like, when you finish your time at a job and you go on to somewhere else, and everybody has to go at some point, but we're going to stay in touch, we'll come visit, those same kind of dynamics were going on. And so I really, really appreciated that. And I thought that was very poignant and fit with the whole piece that you've created here. So.
Mm-hmm.
It's really odd that we got hit with the dark Star Trek and the negative Star Trek and not Gene Roddenberry Star Trek. But all I'm hearing is how human the characters were. And it's an ending that's affecting because people are leaving one another and how much they care about one another. Mm-hmm. Just bugs the living bejesus out of me that this, and it's been since the beginning that this is the non-Roddenberry, Trek of there was that stupid Shatner documentary
Dark Trek,
where he accused me of bringing the ruining the franchise for a while because it was so dark, and it's like, what the hell? William Shatner Conquers the World, I think it's called, or something like that.
I remember that.
Well, they interviewed me for it. That's when I think I first met Bill, actually, or got to spend time with Bill. And then I watched it, and it was like, oh yeah, Ira's dark vision. It's like, what the hell are you? But anyway, it's really interesting. I mean, listen to how we're talking about, all these people that we've invested in, and I mean we, all of us. And so how dark can it ultimately be? It's just another take on Roddenberry land. I don't know.
Would you say it was called William Shatner Conquers the World? I haven't heard of that one. I'll check it out.
Oh yeah.
Or maybe I won't.
No. I mean, I don't remember. That's the thing.
Don't watch it.
That's
Avery had a great scene. So yeah.
All right. I think maybe that's kind of what made it so uplifting, is that if they're picturing it, Deep Space Nine being like a darker kind of environment, that's what forges stronger bonds and stronger relationships, between people conquering these obstacles. Faith, did you have anything else?
I was just saying, sometimes you have to read the whole book before you can judge it. So maybe they just hadn't finished the book yet.
Nice. Love that.
We'll pass it along to somebody who's never actually finished a book. Goldie Scott stops on the second to last page of every book for some reason.
We got to talk, Ryan. We got to talk about this.
What'd you think of this? Great shirt.
There it is right there. This guy right here has a big part of some stuff I want to say. Like echoing what everybody else said, I do love how it feels like it is another day. I know that they did something very similar on Deadwood later on. And even with the bartender standing at the end of the episode, cleaning up the mess that was made. But I don't want to stay too long on that. But I definitely love how it feels. Like Tierney had said, it pulls you into that world even more so under another layer, because you know what it's like for there to be just another day. And when you do go through the tragedy that Worf went through, you go through the growth that Jake and Nog had gone through, and then what the tragedy Jake's going through, and you know that there is another day, I think that does definitely humanize the story even more. But the big note that I took the whole time, everybody was showing their notes off. I couldn't do much because I couldn't focus on writing. I've got like 3 sentences, and it hit me halfway through in the big space battle scene, that you're halfway hoping, oh, come on, I just want some dialogue. Let's hurry this up. Is Nog is piloting the Defiant. And this was a kid that 7 years ago was getting jerked up by his collar because he was stealing. And now he is piloting the most important ship in the most important battle for the galaxy, essentially. And this guy goes from the lowest you can go to that far. And it's because I believe that all started rolling when Jake and Nog got to be friends with each other. And because they sat in that cargo bay and Jake taught him how to read. I don't know if that battle could have, you could do the butterfly effect if it would have went the same way, if it hadn't been for that bit of compassion and friendship and family. I think that is probably what I pull from Deep Space Nine absolutely the most, which I think that darkness thing, you can't such a negative connotation on the word darkness, because through that's when you learn what is important. That's when you learn what light is. That's what you learn is through trials and stuff like that. But yeah, I could go on and on and on and get completely just splintered out in many different directions. But yeah, absolutely love every minute of it. I was not ready for the emotional kick in the chest that I got when I saw baby Cirroc standing up on that.
Yeah.
Man. I was like, I'm doing this when I'm seeing Miles and Bashir doing their thing. I'm like, oh, because then I saw Jake get up and hug, and I'm that was too much. I had to go take a half-mile walk after I finished watching this, guys. I had to go plug some Black Flag in and walk around the block like 4 times just to come back. And my roommate's looking at me like I'm a lunatic, and he's like, "You watch Star Trek? Did you watch Deep Space Nine? Did you?" Yeah, man. So, yeah, love it. Can't say enough. Good, man.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we all kind of had to. Well, we were talking about that earlier. How we all kind of had to pause and take a break because that was too much. Mai is live from Tokyo. You had to have watched this yesterday because there's no way you could have woken up early enough to watch it today.
I powered through. I've been watching it all night. Yeah, lots to say about this episode. It's got a personal connection for me. It always has. I mean, I've lived abroad for 38 years now in 6 different countries in Europe and Asia. I've moved away from people so many times that through this, I've learned never to say goodbye. Just learn to say, see you later. And so long as somebody physically exists on this plane, there's another chance to meet, get on a plane, fly 12 hours, have dinner with them, hang out. So instead, you focus on your journey, your right now, and you let the future be the future. So for me, this spoke to me a lot in that respect. But when someone dies, they're now a memory, not a physical companion anymore. And Odo, Worf, Miles, Garrick, they all exist and could be visited if someone wanted to, if they wanted to. I take your comments, Ira, and Ira, thank you so much for being here with us. This is particularly special today. Even in a way, Sisko's not gone for Cassidy because he said he'd be back. Maybe yesterday. All of those goodbye scenes were, for me, all too familiar because they weren't goodbyes. They were just see you laters for me. One scene only was a true transition to a memory, and it was played by our host, the junior member of the cast, so brilliantly. Just the look on Jake's face as he's holding that small chair, looking at it at first, then holding it against him. He's seeing it. He's holding his father. It's just really special. This scene was for me the most poignant. It was real. 2 weeks ago, I lost my father, and 2 months ago, I lost my mother. And before, hang on, we're not doing that. I've been through all that part. Sorry. Now they exist in my memory, and there need be no true traditional sense of goodbye. I mean, although they're not physically able to be visited, they're there, and a lot of me is who they are, and so that's important to me. And this dichotomy between the physically accessible and simply a memory, it's not the message that's being conveyed here, but I think it's in fact the foundation for what the real message is, or that I took to be the real message of this. The beauty, the elegance of the antithesis of this real message this story tells is we leave nothing behind. We always take it with us. Sometimes it's a memory, a feeling, an experience, an emotion, sometimes a promise of a future meeting, but we leave nothing and nobody behind. We take it with us always. To me, that's the message. The title of this episode speaks to that, but this truth has evolved in our hearts over 7 seasons of immersing ourselves in the lives of these characters and in these worlds. This story, and this is an important statement for me. This story, like Lord of the Rings, is one that we can watch time and again. It engages us. It puts us in the story. The characters become our people. We always find something new as we bask in the amazing storytelling by one of the greatest casts ever assembled. And very much like Lord of the Rings, I know I will visit it again. And this story is simply on hold until my next viewing. I keep it with me. It's not left behind, even when the final scene gives way to the trumpeting music score. We have gained. We have gained. We've not left anything behind. That's all.
Beautiful.
Well said. I'm going to tell my kids next time I speak to them that you said, Deep Space Nine and Lord of the Rings in the same sentence. So they'll be very excited to hear that, since Lord of the Rings is their touchstone.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's no higher compliment could they hear
Mm-hmm.
than that. So I'll see if they believe me or not.
And Aaron had similar sentiments in the documentary.
Mm.
Well, yeah.
What we left behind.
He didn't.
Yeah, you killed him, Ira, though. Yeah.
No,
yeah, and people are still talking about it, which means it's the right decision, without a doubt.
Yep.
I don't think if it was O'Brien, everyone would be, saying that. They said, "Well, O'Brien, you knew
like he drank too much."
But Nog hurts, and that's how I wanted to begin it. I mean, it was not real, so it was all just theorizing a thing. But man, did that turn out to be the right thing because of that entire, pitch, story break. The thing I've heard more than anything else by huge percentage is killing the Nog, which just says, damn, that was the thing.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
I wanted to get your attention, and I did.
Yeah. Aaron was a huge instigator in that too.
I loved his reaction.
I stood up in the movie theater when he reacted. I stood up in the movie theater.
He's like, "This is bullshit. I'm dead."
Ripped off his
I'm
mic.
walking out of this place.
Well, it is one of the things that I'm just so grateful for is, doing that documentary and doing that interview with Aaron and doing the one with Renee. Because I had interviewed Renee before we did the fundraiser, and when it was just going to be an hour thing, we did it at his house, and it was okay. It was good, but it was nowhere near the one we did the second time around. And those two interviews and spending the time and really getting, with Aaron, it was easy because he just, he really used the occasion to open up, and the honesty and the fearlessness of not trying to be hip or cool or ironic. There was no irony, and in interviews it's so easy to hide behind irony. He was just so open and got to say so much, and I'm really grateful for that. And Renee just really, because he was already dealing with his own mortality at that point, and knew I was headed his way, and it's fantastic. And those interviews, one day maybe, I've given up. Let them finish the Voyager doc and see. I'm sure they have another one coming up after that. But maybe one day some of those interviews can be unexpurgated, the entire interviews for some of Armin's also was really good. And I mean, they were all really good.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress.
Definitely not impossible. Sounds like a good idea. Sounds like a lot of people would want to see extended interviews.
Well, some of them are really long. I mean, 3 hours. You think you want to
Have
see
you
the
met
whole
Star Trek fans?
I'd sit through.
They are. Some of them are quite extensive. But anyway, I'm glad we did them.
I was going to say Psycho, but yeah.
Well, we've got Matt Boardman here. How you doing, Matt? Great to see you. This guy's got amazing VFX skills, by the way, everybody. How are you? And did you love this episode?
I love and I hate it at the same time because it makes me feel so many emotions. I have to admit that before this viewing, when I get to this episode, I only watch right up until the part where Ducat and Sisko start falling down in the fire cavern, because the rest of it just tears me up. I mean, it and I feel a little embarrassed in saying this, but it literally takes my breath away at the overwhelming emotions that I feel about seeing all the montage, especially. Yeah. It's been interesting to me as I've gotten older, because at the time Deep Space Nine was on the internet, in the public, it was sort of a new thing, and I guess I just lived in this little bubble in Michigan where I had no idea that people had this dislike for Deep Space Nine, because I've always loved this series. The Next Generation, I've always described it as a warm blanket. Deep Space Nine to me is the chicken soup for the soul.
Mm-hmm.
I call it TV Xanax.
Okay. Ivy Sue? It's asking, yeah.
I love it. I mean, I've always loved it. The characters are so rich. The arc that they go on, and I love that the montages remind us of these arcs of where they were. I always think it's amazing that we got to watch Cirroc grow up, and it hit me even more watching that final scene as we're pulling out from the station, remembering back where we were with the emissary. But I don't know how people cannot like this series. Like, the writing is just so good. Like, I hate to say this because I love Voyager, but I'll watch through Next Generation, and then I'll watch through all of Deep Space Nine, and then I'll go into the first season of Voyager, and I always feel this letdown because the writing in Deep Space Nine is just, to me, it's tops. I mean, there were so many things. Like, I love, like in this episode, we get Ross makes he references the MacArthur quote, and that whole scene of them signing the treaty with the Dominion at the end. They're so reminiscent of the signing with the Japanese on the USS Missouri, and just little things like that. But I love this episode because everybody brings their A game to the table. Everything just works. But like I said, I also don't like it because I don't want to say goodbye to these characters. I love every single one of them. They just, they helped me get through so many moments in my life. They helped me get through when I first moved out to LA to start a visual effects career, and ended up going through a very nasty divorce. Deep Space Nine was there, and that was my comfort for me. I'm going to get emotional here. I'm sorry. So it's hard for me watching this episode to say goodbye to these characters, and that's why I don't, often don't finish the episode, because I don't want to say goodbye, because those characters have become such a big part of my life, and yeah, you can say they're fictional characters, but I mean, isn't that why we tell these stories? I think we tell, one of the reasons I love working in Hollywood is because it's an opportunity for me to participate in that sharing, that collective. I think, as I watch shows, the writers, they're sharing a part of themselves in these episodes, and that to me is just such a cool part of all this, and to be creative, and to affect other people's lives through those stories. That's what it's all about. Yeah, okay, Deep Space Nine, it's not It's not next gen. It's not the Federation, but that's what makes it so cool. We get a chance to see a different side of the Star Trek universe, and what we find are characters with so many layers that are so deep that I mean, how can you not love them? So yeah, that's my take on this episode.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff. Very good. Thank you, Matt.
My second favorite episode after Prophet and Lace.
Yes.
So I do have to say, Let He Who Is Without Sin is also right up there.
Ooh,
so it's hard to really decide between Prophet and Lace.
Go Cola.
Really? Oh my God.
I feel the need to go play some soccer all of a sudden. Too soon?
Football, not soccer, but football.
Football, that's right.
Oh.
All right. We've got Dr. Susan V. Gruner here hanging out, smiling, and ready to tell us that this episode is a 10.
No, it's not a 10.
What? It's an 11.
10 million. Ira.
Yes.
Granted, this is just my opinion. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I'm not the dullest either. Deep Space Nine is the best television show ever. Of any, and there's a lot of good ones. MASH was good. I know that it's true that Deep Space Nine did not get the love that it deserved, but it really, the depth of the characters, everything that everybody has said is so true. The writers knew the characters so well. The characters, the actors were cast so well. We believe that we know these people. The layers, just everything is perfect. And there were not very many misfires in the seasons. I can't think of any that I hated. And I can say that about some of the other iterations of Star Trek episodes that I absolutely will not watch. But Deep Space Nine stands far, far, far in another solar system compared to all the others. I took a bunch of pages of notes. It was just little things that meant a lot to me. I cried a lot. I have my Kleenex here because everybody here knows that I'm a big crybaby and I'm trying not to cry. One of the little details that are in every single episode, in my opinion, is one of the reasons that makes it stand out. The relationship between Jake and his dad. That scene where they hug and kiss and everything, it's not the first time. We see that from the first episode. The very first episode is the best first episode of any television show ever. And I feel that way about the last episode, best ever. And I agree totally with Matt. It's a love-hate relationship. I did not want it to end. You just have to find the money, I guess. I think the actors would go back, but there's a perfect excuse for those who are no longer with us not to be here. It could be written in. It's just so good. Some of the notes that I took down were that you really get to see Worf's sense of humor. Again, and Keiko saying, that the toy belongs in a museum. The sarcasm is just so great. Nog, we've all talked about Nog, the character, how he grew. I wrote my exact words are thief, Nog, now ensign, piloting, defiant.
Yeah.
Wayne being the last clone. I noticed that the founder is a southpaw. That probably has nothing to do with anything. And I wrote down tears of the fans. Now you answered one of my questions. I wanted to know why Jadzia was not in that final montage, but you answered it. And I thought it was absolutely perfect. And that's why I go back to Deep Space Nine. I was serious about the TV Xanax. I don't need to take anything. Yeah. And when I get upset, my story, in case you haven't heard it, I'll make it really quick. What I do for a living can be very horrific. I see dead people all the time, and sometimes they're children. And I do what I have to do at a death scene. I drive home. It's usually at least an hour where I ugly cry. And I haven't done it lately, but a couple of years ago was the last time I did a murder scene. But after I throw my clothes off, throw them in the dryer, put on my pajamas or whatever, I turn on the television and I watch Deep Space Nine. And that is my safe place. It has been since the day one when I started watching it in the 90s. And it is still today. And all I can say is great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, I think we owe you the thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Yeah.
And the combination of all the cast and the writers and everything is just, I wrote second to none. Second to none.
I don't know, Sue. You're pretty good at making us emotional too. So you're pretty good at it too. Thanks for that, Sue. And we love how great you've been with our show and always being an open book and sharing so much with us. Katie's wearing a Dax shirt. And so this is our Dax for the day, I guess.
I am.
We've got, how are you? And have you seen this episode recently?
I saw it last year during my run through. I would have watched it if I would have known, but it was kind of like late notice that we were recording today. So I would have, but no, it was so good. And I have to say one thing that I'm sick, by the way, so my voice is a little off. So apologies. But the music in this episode was so brilliant. In the montage scene, having The Way You Look Tonight come full circle was really well used. And then also just the music when Kira says goodbye to Odo, which was one of the most moving scenes for me because I loved Kira and Odo's relationship, and it was really hard for me for him to leave her. Just the whole how the music and the editing was with that was really good. Probably just the character that stuck out the most, in addition to Sisko, him saying goodbye to Cassidy. I think it really showed what a strong woman she was. You know, she's going to have this baby and her husband's leaving, but she has this faith that he will return. So I think it showed a very brave side to Cassidy. And Worf, I was glad that he got a new position, even though that kind of changed when we get up to Nemesis. I was always confused with what happened to the position he received, but you know, what are you going to do about it? And then Quark, you know, he was still Quark at the end of the show. So I just felt like they kept the characters very true. And thank you, Ira and Ron Moore and Robert Wolf and all those who had written on the show, produced the show, and created these characters, because they were just very powerful and very impacting.
Hans Beimler.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Katie. We know you're sick, and we appreciate you.
No, thank you. And of
toughing it
course, one of the great treats was seeing Cirroc grow up on the show.
Yes,
it was just, and then you watch the finale, and then you go back to restart, and you're like, look how tiny he was,
a baby.
Now, and
he gets younger every time you see that pilot.
I loved his relationship with his father. It was so positive and just wonderful to see. It really was.
I felt like other people grew too during the montages. I do notice that I grew the most.
Literally.
Yeah. But guys like Siddig, I thought he looked really young in the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah, I could see him grow. He grew.
Yeah.
So did Nanag.
Sure.
Nanag
Yeah.
Yeah.
She changed.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just the kid here. It was all of us. We all. That's what made it so emotional for me too, because it was like, wow, I did watch all of us grow. It was like 7 years. It's like I watched us all grow together, and I guess watching those memories makes you think of the memories that you make in your own life and that you create with people, and it makes you think about just the fleetingness of moments and stuff. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was special.
Yeah.
Cirroc, did you tell us once that Mark Alamo has that ball?
I don't know who has
Why
the
do
ball.
I have that in my mind that he has it? Baseball.
Don't say that.
No, not Mark Alamo. No, he's already a big enough villain. Let's not.
And your little ball too.
Why do I think that? I heard that somewhere.
Ball too.
There's some fan art for you. Ducat sitting in the fire caverns holding Sisko's ball.
Oh man.
I can just picture him at home, Mark Alamo in his study, in front of a fireplace, just throwing the ball up, laughing maniacally.
Yeah, exactly.
Break my nose. I take your ball.
Oh my gosh!
I'm surprised that Quark never replicated the baseball and then sold it on the station. I felt like that would have been something he would have done.
Probably did that now.
Yeah,
probably did that was season 8, episode 2.
Yeah. Ira's writing the script right now. Yeah,
you got it. You better believe it.
It's in the gift shop on the.
I was gonna say, wasn't that in Lower Decks?
Yeah, it's offshoot
I wonder if
canon.
it was
That's
sold
not
at
real.
auction at the Sotheby's auction in what was it, 2007 or something like that. Maybe they sold it. I don't know.
We'll have to Google it. We'll look into this. Acquiring minds want to know.
Ball.
Titus Mohler, welcome back. It's been a while. We appreciate you making sure that you had to make it for this particular episode. Do you love it or what?
Yeah, I think there was some really great stuff in it, and I agree with the comments that and it's great to honored to have you here again, Ira. I think it is the best show ever, and it's interesting hearing some of the comments about what people really love about it. Star Trek can deal with some divisive topics. It's not afraid to delve into politics and all sorts of different things that can divide people. But I think one thing that's a great unifier that has been is the characters. We really gravitate to the characters. And I feel like Deep Space Nine, more than any other show at that time in Trek, put the characters first. I mean, it's on display in Emissary, the very first episode. And, I know you guys are moving on to Next Gen next on the channel. And Next Gen was my first introduction to Trek. That was my first love. I will say you're probably in for a little bit of a rough transition because I think it took them a little while before the character focus became stronger.
Thank goodness we've got Denise Crosby with us.
Exactly, yeah.
she'll help bridge it.
Definitely. And then in the sense, the idea that, it's the dark Trek and stuff, I was just thinking about when you guys were talking before, I thought of the phrase, the night is always darkest before the dawn. And so to me, when you kind of go through some difficult trials, I think it can lead to even greater highs, greater light. And so I think that's why a lot of us, we don't remember it as sort of a gloomy, journey. It's one where we got to see characters grow and reach incredible highs because of the difficult stuff they went through. So just a couple quick notes, and then I had a question for Ira and a question for Cirroc. To me, in series finales, as I've gotten older and watch shows and make it all the way to the end, I feel like they're almost every big part of the final episode. I always feel like it's sort of sacred, and I imagine for the writers who've been there the whole time, it's the last time you do a cold open. It's the last time you kind of break down all the different acts, and the last time you have different characters on screen. And so one of the moments that I was just looking at when I reviewed some of the episode today was who got the last line before we go into the opening credits. And I don't know that it's always something that's highlighted by writers as, okay, we want to have a cool moment going into the credits. But Sisko, I think, kind of ushers us in that direction when he says, what do you say we end this war? But I note that the actual last line before we begin the credits goes to Nog. And he just says, if I get lost, I'll follow the ship in front of me. Mm-hmm. I thought that was kind of neat. And it highlights what you guys noted, that, that why is he saying that? It's because he's navigating, he's the one who's guiding the Defiant. And that is a great exclamation point on his development as a character.
Yep.
I also want to mention the music, like Katie did. Because of this episode, out of the all the different big band standards, The Way You Look Tonight has always held a special place in my heart. And I think Dennis McCarthy did a great job of blending that with the DS9 theme during the montage.
Yeah.
And so yeah, definitely worthy of acknowledging that. And and I also wanted to note too that there was a payoff from a setup 8.5 years prior that Cirroc and Ryan, you guys will be, and Malissa, you guys will be visiting as you go through Next Gen. And O'Brien, as he picks up the little piece from the floor, there's a reprise of Minstrel Boy, which O'Brien sings in the very first Chief O'Brien-centric episode of Next Gen called The Wounded. And that's right in the middle of season 4. It's a great episode. And I thought it was neat that Dennis McCarthy, I don't know if that was in the script or if Dennis McCarthy did that, but it's a nice little, it's the last bit of music you hear before we go into the montage scenes.
Shout out to Dennis.
Yeah, great knowledge.
Amazing, amazing music. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I loved the Cardassian Rebellion underground scenes. I thought you could almost do like a mini series on the adventures, of Kira, Dukat, and Damar and Mila. I think it's neat too that Mila crops up. I might be wrong by this. I think she only crops up in the show once before, and I think it's in season 3 on a monitor in Odo's office. I think it was after Garrick blew up his shop. And I remember whenever I see that again, I think, ooh, this is a little preview of the final arc of the whole show. And but I love those scenes, and some people highlighted already. I love the stuff with Damar and Mila. I thought that was great, and reminded me of just how different a light that we're seeing Damar in. He used to be this villain, who originally he was sort of Dukat's lackey, and then he kind of grew into the main Cardassian representative. But
he killed Sial.
Yes. And so yeah, it's hard. How do you come back from that? But
he did pretty good.
I still haven't forgiven him. So
he only killed one of the 4, so it's 3 others.
And all 4.
I wanted to know what he was going to say in his dying words. He said, "Keep."
Well, originally he wasn't supposed to say anything. He was just supposed to be dead. But I forget why we got the little. But originally it was supposed to be like the last thing you expected. That's why we kept building him up so that the last thing that the audience would expect is as soon as the battle begins, he's dead. Which was a salute to him playing Travis in the IMAX Alamo film, where Travis gets killed right off at the beginning of the movie, the battle. So that was Travis to the end for Casey.
I have an idea about that, actually.
That's great. I didn't know that.
And I didn't know I'd ever have the opportunity to ask this question of the writer of the episode. But Ira, I remember when I watched this episode in 1999, as this scene happened, I thought It took me completely by surprise, and I thought it was a stroke of pure genius. Garrick, Kira, Damar at the gates of the Dominion headquarters, and they can't get in, and they all start telling jokes and bust out laughing.
Yeah.
I thought that was incredible, and I was wondering, how did that come about?
It was just, the idea of what is the last thing the audience is going to expect from this scene. How do people, the thing, and I say this a lot when I'm offered jobs or I'm offered a script to read and do I want to do the show? So, they used to talk about well-made plays, and I think there's such a thing as a well-made TV episode where everything reads exactly like you'd imagine a good, strong TV episode to read, but there are no surprises. It's very competent, it's well done, it's professional, but it bores the shit out of me. I needed to take me to places that I don't know that I want to go. That's the thing. That's why all this stuff with fans telling people what they should be doing or trying to follow the fan kind of, this is what the fans are going to like. No, because fans don't know what they're going to like until you show it to them, until you figure it out. So it's just, what is the last thing you would expect in the last episode of the series, in this moment of tension, in this moment of drama? What is the human reaction that's unexpected? And that's just to kind of start to crack a little bit with laughter, because you just can't handle the tension anymore. And it's so goddamn stupid that you're ready to die and you can't even get into the building to die, for the cause. So it just like, at that point, Rick was done basically with notes. I mean, he was now along for the ride or too busy with Voyager or whatever, but we got no blowback on it. At that point, people expected Deep Space Nine to do something different,
Mm-hmm.
So it was just, I had forgotten all about it, guys. I had forgotten that scene entirely till I watched it yesterday, and I thought, oh wow, that surprised me now, and that kind of worked. And it only worked because we had, Andy and Nana and Casey basically to pull it off. You need good actors to be able to make that real. So that's the answer to that.
Mm-hmm. And Titus, you had a question for Cirroc as well, yeah?
Yeah, and Cirroc, I might be testing your memory banks here a little, but I just wanted to know if you remembered what was going through your mind when you guys filmed the final shot of the series. If you remembered, if you got any particular direction, or if you were just what you were thinking about as Jake.
I think I was thinking that I would one day see my father again, and that he's out there somewhere. That's how I was. That was the look that I registered on the face. And then it's different. Like I was talking with Ira, it's different than how I remembered it. I remembered it being more of a sad thing, but I didn't feel a sense of sadness in that moment. Actually, I felt a sense of more anticipation of what is to come, and kind of going from there. But yeah, no, the one thing I do remember about that moment very vividly was the sensitivity and compassion that I felt Nana have as an actress, just the concern she had for me, which extended beyond just the script, but it was also just about her nature in general being that kind of a person. So that's what I remember, the bond that we have and that we share. Yeah.
Did your perspective on that scene change now that you've been through and seen the whole epic, the whole series?
Yeah, I think, I don't know where I got it in my head or how it came about that that Ira is somehow, guilty of doing Sisko wrong in some type of way.
And I feel like what I do see as on the rewatch is I feel like he ended it in an appropriate manner, and I felt like it couldn't really be any better than what it was. So no, my rewatch or my feeling now is that Ira created a real masterpiece in this final episode, and that it just weaves into the whole rest of the tapestry of Deep Space Nine. So I think it's fantastic and marvelous. And I think Ira and Hans did a fantastic job at just wrapping all of these things up and giving us, as the audience, all the things we wanted to see.
And Titus. Oh, sorry. What were you saying?
I was just saying thanks to both of you.
And Titus, thank you for being the third person to bring up Next Generation in this. The first two, Anna Post said the word justice, and Eve England said the word parallels, which are episode titles. Good enough for me.
And then I just threw a tapestry in there for you for the mix.
This guy knows. Thank you, number one. So Grandpa One is here in a field of poppies. How are you, Tim? Do you love this episode?
Oh, absolutely. And two things. First off, thank you, Ira, for this show. I've used it. It saved my life after Afghanistan. The reason I have poppies in the back is because this is Remembrance Day, November 11th, yesterday. Or was it Friday? It was Friday. So I take, I want to remember my brothers and sisters. But thank you, Ira, for doing this show. I'm going to make it quick. I'm going to start before I review the episode. My biggest nitpick was when Bashir goes, "Oh, now I know how far down the spots go." Okay. That should have stopped, in the second or third season when that came up. He's a doctor, and, he's, okay. It was kind of humorous, but, I'll move on.
Thanks.
There you are. No, there are certain scenes in movies and TV shows that mean a lot to people. And Andy's scene with Sadiq at the end was incredible. It was, I still go back and rewatch that. Where, he's, and it made me think when I rewatched it today, it made me think about people in Europe after World War II. They had fled their cities and then they come back. Oh, I'm back home, but there's nothing left there. And that was very powerful. And then, of course, the montage with The Way You Look Tonight, along with the DS9 theme, that was incredible. But one of the things I wanted to, now that I've got the pulpit, one of the things I wanted to say was that of the 3 Star Trek series that have gone the full 7 years, or the planned, you have TNG, Voyager, and DS9 that actually had a planned season finale or series finale. I've always said that DS9 was the best. Voyager was a close second. TNG, it was trash. But the one thing, and I still to this day remember, when I finally, after 2016 or 2017, I saw the finale. DS9 ended. It's like when we had the montage, I was thinking, I like all the characters, even Quark. I mean, I was like,
even Quark.
Oh yeah.
I was going to say even Ducat or something. Even Quark.
Yeah, no, Ducat's dead. No, it's like, no, but I loved everything about it. And I use the analogy because I've had some friends talk about when you read a great book and at the end of it, you're like, you have this equanimity that's like, oh God, this was a great book. But you also have the melancholy where I'm never going to read this book again for the first time. You know, at the end of it, I was like, oh, this is a great episode. And then I'm thinking, I'm never going to watch it for the first time ever again. Yeah, I've rewatched it several times. You know, you don't get to see it for the first time. And, you know, unfortunately, because of all my moving around, I never saw it originally back in 99. And it wasn't until I got back and, you know, I watched the whole series through. But you know what? Thank you, Ira. Thank you, everybody. And I wanted to point out before I leave, this T-shirt means a lot. It says, "This love is not for cowards." And when 2 years before I retired, and then afterwards, the pub that I always post about, Union Jack, when COVID hit and everything was shut down, we started a fundraiser for the employees. And these were the T-shirts. It said, "This love is not for cowards." On the back, it said,
Dallas Cowboys. Oh, sorry.
Well, on the back, it says, "Tonight, love is an empty pub." And we sold these T-shirts and gave the money to the employees. And they became a support network with me. And the reason why I'm wearing it is because you all have become a support network for me.
We all love you, Tim.
I'm going to try to keep carrying on. It's going to be tough, but I mean,
we're here.
I quit Facebook for 3 days coming up to Veterans Day just because I didn't want to see all the posts. I'm like, I've moved on, sort of. I'm going to have another sip of beer.
Thank you back, Tim. If you check our chat, you'll see everybody's telling you how much they love you back in the chat
I
as
haven't
well.
seen that.
Yeah.
But we really appreciate you and your words, and we feel the same about you. We'll always be here for you. I'll tell you that much. I think that's everybody. I just wanted to add I think the reason that montage was so especially powerful for me at this time around, you know, where O'Brien picks up the toy and there's this montage that's just wrecks us, is because this time when I saw every one of those scenes, I wasn't remembering just those scenes. I was remembering every moment in my lifetime recently where we were talking about those scenes. Sometimes a scene with Aaron, talking about it with Aaron. Sometimes, you know, it's just myself and Cirroc or others. Sometimes it was when I had just gotten into a car accident, had a bunch of bones broken in my back. Sometimes there was a pandemic going on. And so each one of these moments and these scenes and all that, it was actually a memory of my actual life now. And, you know, I think a lot of us may have felt something similar to that. And so it's just doubly powerful. So Ira, you created something that will wreck us forever. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I echo what you said, Ryan? That montage did a similar thing for me. That yes, it reminded me of Deep Space Nine and going through all of the wonderful moments there, but it also made me think of all of the wonderful moments on the seventh rule that have been shared with everyone here. And those moments will always be cherished. And yeah.
Cirroc, any final thoughts?
A couple things. One, there was a reference to Leonidas and the Spartans, and I thought, wow,
yes.
Ira, you dropped the whole 300 movie in the last episode.
Yeah.
Because of you, we got the movie 300. So thank you for
yes, exactly.
And also, Cirroc, our very first episode that we recorded without Aaron, we called it Leonidas because there was the Leonidas character in it, and you were calling him Leonidas. And so when you said that, it reminded me of that very first moment that we checked on without Aaron.
Yeah, I thought that was crazy. I was like, did this happen before 300 came out? That's pretty intuitive of you there, Ira. The other thing I thought was you predicted it. Also, Nog said a line in the in this episode. He said, "She did pretty well for a first date." And I was thinking that's the best first date that Nog ever did. It just happens to be during the Dominion War, but you know.
No preaching food there.
No preaching food.
Yeah, and I also like the moment that Mila said to Garrick when she said, "Oh, I've seen all of these disgraceful characteristics turn into virtues."
Mm-hmm.
And it made me think of, sometimes the things that we dislike about somebody are the things that we end up liking about somebody. And I thought that was very clever. So no, this is a 10 episode, and I don't think there's any flaws in it. We all have our nitpicks. We could do it over, do it like this, do it like that through hindsight. But when you're sitting there watching that episode, if you're not going through a roller coaster of emotion, if you're not digesting and processing all of the stuff happening, then you're brain dead, because that thing is just filled with heart pulling. And at some point or another, you're just like, okay, I got to pause it and find some tissue. So, Ira, thank you for, giving us the show, for pushing your vision, for not caring about what people thought and what executives told you to do, whatever, whatever the formula they wanted you to stick to, whatever it was that made you get to the position or decision that you're going to do it your way, like Frank Sinatra. We appreciate it. We thank you for it. And the results are just timeless. So thank you, Ira. Love you, man. Love you, man.
I do have one thing to add. Ira, I had to get it from my Star Trek shelf over there, but thank you for writing this. It is the Rules of Acquisition
with
book.
Armin, I believe, right?
Yeah.
With Armin. I got this for my mother because her favorite character on Deep Space Nine was Quark. So it was a very, very fun read. So I highly recommend it to any DS9er because it's just brilliant. So thank you for also giving us that add to the Ferengi culture and the Rules of Acquisition, because they're really fun to read. They really are.
He said, either you do it or we're going to hire someone else to do it. Simon and Schuster. So it's like, okay, screw you, I'll do it. Damn it. I mean,
any final thoughts from you, Ira, before we end this?
Well, I don't think it's a final thought, but I do think one of the things that did amuse me that I hadn't said yet was that last scene with Nog, it was not the last episode for Nog. Nog didn't, he doesn't care that people are leaving. He doesn't care that stories are ending, that friendships are broken. Nog was it was a good day for Nog. He's made lieutenant. He's got a relationship with Kira, in terms of like the doing business of it all. And for Nog, there are no tears for Nog. You know, there's no endings for Nog. He's just beginning. His story is just beginning. He's playing it like, you know, I'm fine, man. Give me a job. I'm going to do it. It's another day. I'll go to sleep. I'll wake up and I'll do it again. So I thought that was kind of interesting and refreshing in this kind of episode.
Do the inventory. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of final thoughts, I guess what all of this, you know, the seventh rule, you know, itself has reminds me that, you know, there is no ending, you know, that the job is done. You know, I don't live on Deep Space Nine anymore. I don't think about it every day. It's not a challenge to be solved like it used to be for 7 years. But, you know, a part of me lives on Deep Space Nine, you know? It's like, it has nothing to do with want or not want. It just is. And that's kind of cool. And the fact that people like it now, and it seems to have aged well, is a very positive feeling. And I've said this to Armin, I've said this to some of the other actors, and I've said this to some of the writers in the last couple of years. You know, there's nothing wrong with accepting, you know, a victory every now and then. You know, as writers, as people, we tend to focus on failures and things we wish we would have done or could have done, or things that could have worked out a different way. That's part of the human condition. And you know, it's like we're all afraid to like sit back for a moment and go, wow, that was okay. You know, that was the thing that we did. We did it together. And certainly for the first 13 years after the show was over, I didn't think of Deep Space Nine much at all. I still saw people, Wolfie, Combs, you know, friends that I had made, Jimmy, but it wasn't, you know, it was the past, and it's always move forward, move forward, move forward. But it's nice sometimes to revisit nice moments in the past. And, you know, I think we can all enter our house justified for our little bit of the franchise. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I appreciate it. And I know I'm lucky to have had that opportunity and to have made the best of it that I could. And, you know, I love my Deep Space Nine family. You know, I love even the fuckers who drove me crazy while we were doing the show. You know, I forgive everyone everything, because the end result is bigger than any kind of bullshit, you know, personality thing or disagreements. And you know, let it live, and good luck to it. And I'm glad people are still watching.
But Ira, you killed Will Robinson.
That's true.
You know, Bill loves to tell that story, and I didn't even remember saying it when he first started telling that story. But yes, I guess I did say it on the stage at the moment. But you know, he turned down like 3 roles on the show that I offered him because he didn't want to wear makeup. You know. So I gave him his face and I killed him. So, you know, trade-off. It's a trade-off. He got his face, he got dead.
All right. Well, thank you, Ira. Thank you for being always such a huge and consistent supporter of this show and its community, and sharing so much of your time and energy with us. We really appreciate that. We know you're busy, and we know you've probably answered every one of our questions a million times over and probably will again. but we appreciate you always being here for us. and answering things to the best of your ability and really giving us these amazing insights that always give me so much to think about.
Well, good luck with the show. Good luck with TNG. I don't know Denise all that well, but the times that I've run into her and spent some time with her, I like her a hell of a lot. So I think she'll be an asset. So good luck watching 7 years of TNG.
I don't know why, but
yeah.
For some reason, I felt
we'll
like
try.
Yeah, you took it a little
They
funny
need some
there.
luck. They need some luck.
Anyway, all right. Well, thank you very
Ira.
much.
Hey,
DS9 forever, man.
I love you. Let's
Love you too,
now
brother.
that the pandemic is, we should do another lunch.
Okay, I'm in.
Sounds good. Sounds good,
Just
man.
give me the address.
We'll text you.
We'll send it out. We'll text it out.
But also thank you very much to Carrie, Sue, Titus, Tim, Mai, Matt, Malissa, of course, Tierney, Anna, Faith, Eve, Goldu Scott Jensen, Anil, and Katie. We appreciate all of you. This has been a great time. We've got the season 7 review special next week, so everybody stick around for that. We're not done. Deep Space Nine never ends. It's kind of like that home that you lived in for a while in your childhood. You can go back and visit.
I bought that home.
Melissa,
Love you, Ira.
love you too.
And I would love to see you and Laura sometime.
Yes, hopefully. I didn't know that story about the ring. That's what I'm taking away from this day more than anything else. That's the one that'll live with me. I'm glad to hear it, and it touched me. So there you go. Be well.
Yes. Thank you.
Enjoy, everyone.
too.
Thanks.
All right, everybody.
See you all on some other side somewhere.
And everybody at home, always remember the 7th rule.